Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Let Loose podcast, the podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge in the Pokemon TCG. I'm Jeff Bache, I'm your host, and today we're joined by an awesome pair of co-hosts, Zach and Ray. What's up, guys?
What's up, Bache?
Hey,
Hey,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, so happy to have you guys on. I know you both, not by your actual names, Zach and Ray, but I know you guys as Cuddles and Waffles on your streams that happen on Monday night, as you guys do, husband and wife GLC battles, which are super sweet. So how do you guys want to talk about Waffles and Cuddles and why the nicknames?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was always hoping to have a chance to actually bring that up. So in 2020, I stopped reading the news and I decided to get into Pokemon because I played like Gen 1 and 2 and then I got out of it. She never got out of it. Never. So I met her 5.5 years ago and she got me playing Pokemon Let's Go, which is like a remake of Gen 1. So of course that gets old man me kind of back into Pokemon. And so we fast forward back again to 2020. I decided instead of reading the news and being depressed, I'm going to play Pokemon Go, go outside, and catch some Charmanders. I figure I'm never going to meet anyone playing Pokemon. Ray, what should I call myself? She says, Z-Man Cuddles. You can't have numbers in your name because it's not cool if you have numbers in your username. I thought, that's fine. Anyway, we met tons of people playing Pokemon Go, have a great friend network from there. And then I thought, this Twitch thing is kind of neat. I'm starting to play Pokemon TCG. I'll just use the same name. I'm not going to meet people from that. I was wrong. So Cuddles was just my nickname for her, and it's just become sort of a Pokemon identity, I guess.
Yeah.
And where does Waffles come from?
I don't know where Waffles comes from. You just called me Waffles one and it stuck. There's no reason. It's just he called me Waffles, and now he always calls me Waffles.
I mean,
that's
so much better than so many of the names that I use. I think my Pokemon Go name is just Bache, like just straight up, just my last name, Bache. No one else has it, so I got the original stuff. And nice. Then my Twitch username, all about that Bache. The year was 2014 for me when that came into existence. I was teaching 8th grade at the time. And Megan Trainor had just released that sound. Also, like the term "bay" had just come out, and so of course, Beige being my name, so like every single 8th grader was like, "All about the beige" or "beige," and they would spell it wrong on the paper. So 8th graders have greatly influenced my whole Twitch identity going forward.
I love that. I think that's great.
That's the best.
I gotta give kudos to my first ever teaching class. They drove me crazy, but we had some good times. So
I'm sure you'll never forget them.
Yeah, well, you can't forget him if he sees that username every day.
That's true.
Right? Exactly. I do have, when I was naming my son, teachers do have a list of names that they will not call their children. So when we were trying to pick my son's name, a couple of names from that class were not on there. So I also think about them every time I look at Oliver, because I'm like, you could have been a Joseph, you could have been a Nathan. Thank goodness you're not.
Yep. Who would want to be a Joseph? Oh my goodness. All they do is play the Gothitelle psychic deck, I'll tell you.
Throwing shade at our listeners. Love it. Well,
that's right.
Well, we got some great stuff going on today. We're going to be talking, I think, maybe what most people want us to talk about, which are like the best types of GLC. We've got Colorless and Psychic. What are your two thoughts on this? Is there a better type in GLC right now?
My heart belongs to Dragon, but I'm not stupid. I can't tell you seriously that Dragon is the best. So yeah, I'd say that Colorless and Psychic, the best types.
Yeah, Colorless is the type that if it's your first time playing GLC and you say that you go 3-0, I have no doubt you probably played Turbo Colorless and it was your first time and it just kind of made sense and clicked. So it's scary in that way. Psychic is the scariest because if someone like yourself or Tricky Jim walks into my card shop and they are playing a Tinkaton Psychic deck, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to try really hard because that is the scariest deck in the most capable hands.
I think that I've been angriest against Psychic. I'm like, this guy is playing Psychic again. Done with this game already.
Yeah, Psychic is a popular type. It's always been one of the better types in the VGC as well. And so the fact that it's just kind of still remains overpowered even now in the TCG and in a singleton Pokemon format can be pretty frustrating. I think the first event that I ever really did well with, I walked in with Psychic Dragapult and was just like playing against a Dark deck, and it like didn't even matter because I just flipped like 5 heads with Dragapult. So I'm like, oh, this is my worst matchup, and we just still won it regardless. So Psychic feels good. Colorless feels good. They're great types. But I do want it to be put on the record. I am stupid enough to say that my favorite type, fighting, is the best type. And I will say it. But please don't actually play fighting, guys. Play good decks. Play Psychic, play Colorless. I think water is probably another type that maybe is in like contention for that same spot. I don't know, because these two decks exist, water feels like maybe it has a tough time specifically into Psychic because of its ability lock, which we'll talk about coming up later. And then Colorless just has like the best acceleration in the form of single energy cards. So like, can water keep up? I don't know. It's a deck I like to play into these decks, but it's still a tough matchup. It's an uphill matchup against these two types, I feel.
Yeah, I put water half a tier below. Turbo has the speed, and so water might not set up. And then Psychic has about the same amount of speed, but actually has a little bit more power, is my take on it.
And then, something else that's a little bit interesting is that we always have to bring this up. Like, yes, there are best types in Gym Leader Challenge because the format can't be balanced just because of the way that cards are printed. But it's really up to pilot skill when you think about it. Like, this is one of the reasons why I can walk into a room and maybe put up results with fighting. Not going to say I'm like the best player, but I've played a lot of fighting, so I know what my deck is doing. But pilot skill is the most important thing. So you can pilot your bad fairy deck to wins in the Gym Leader Challenge format, even against these two decks. But the floor is so low on these decks, like it's hard to do bad with Colorless, while it's hard to do good with some of the other types. So that's kind of where we're at. So know that pilot skill plays a big role when you're picking your deck. Like if the deck's not performing well for you, get good.
Yep. Well said. I think the best thing about this format is the card pool's so big, you can probably make your favorite Pokemon work. If you want to try really hard to make something work, you can. And it really shows off deck building skill and pilot skill. And especially deck building skill is something you can't have in standard. Because when you can have 4 of cards, you only have spots for maybe 1 or 2 personalizations. So if you look at standard right now, Charizard's the best deck, and not only that, you can only change 1 card off of Torts. If you do more than that, you're throwing at a regional kind of level. So that's something where I like about it being a singleton format, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Don't get too caught up on competitive of what's the best type. You can really make anything work.
Oh yeah. I pulled some sweet games with Krabby Blindside the other night. Like Articuno Blindside like 2 times in a deck. Like you can make ridiculous things work. Let's get into this. We're just going to kind of talk like what makes these two types, in our opinions at least, the best decks in the format. What are some of these key pieces? Why is it frustrating to play against them? What can we do as players? Like what can we take into our own hands to maybe tech for these matchups? What are some tips that we need going into these matchups? And does it matter? Are they just so good that it doesn't matter? Up on the screen, for those of you who are watching this instead of listening to this, we've got 2 of the best kind of draw engine consistency engines that Psychic has. And that's Kirlia with the refinement ability, which is basically a trade ability, discard 1, draw 2. And then its evolution, Glade, with the Buddy Catch ability, which is just search your deck for any supporter and put it in your hand. And by far, I think that this is the best 2 cards that you can put into any Psychic deck. Like one of the reasons why Psychic type is so diverse in the terms of what decks you'll see coming out of this type is that these 2 cards just basically are the entire engine to keeping the deck functioning.
Yeah, and of course you can relate to the Glade as a dragon trainer. With
Yeah,
being
I
like
mean,
fast call.
yeah, having a buddy catch, get a supporter, it's powerful. And I like it too because I think it speaks to it sets a skill to the deck rather than it just being a mindless thing that you play. Like you have to know what supporter you're getting. I like it when better players benefit from knowing what they're doing.
That's a good sign of a healthy format for sure.
Talked about this with Macargo and Fire. Like getting any card is great. Like, it's always going to be beneficial for you to get a card that does something instantly. But getting the right card is such a like contextual thing that you have to like read a board state, acknowledge what your opponent has, and then choose accordingly. And so the fact that Buddy Catch requires a lot of skill here to not only keep your deck running, but also maybe disrupting your opponents at the appropriate times is really
Mhm.
important for Psychic type in general.
Especially because disruption's not just hand disruption, but the ability to hand pick when you want to get your Hex Maniac can be game changing.
Even just grabbing like an Arvin and like, hey, I'm gonna grab a VS Seeker maybe for next turn, or like grab a Pal Pad and shuffle it back in and Buddy Catch in the future. Like having those sorts of lines and plans, like it's really just it takes so much to play Psychic. Like it's got all these tools to it, but obviously like you need to know what you're doing when you're playing Psychic, and that's one of the reasons why it's the better types, is that players that are good and that are skilled tend to lean into these abilities that give them a lot of autonomy and choice when it comes to what they can do to affect the matchup. That's what I love about it.
Definitely.
All right. Well, hey, the next best thing about Psychic is the energy acceleration. Like, it just has it all, right? Like, we've got Malamar. Psychic Recharge takes an energy from the discard and attaches it to a bench Pokemon. Xatu, which in all honesty I thought was going to be more busted, and maybe it actually is, but you attach the energy from hand to a bench Pokemon and draw 2 cards. And then just the cutest little free prize that your opponents are ever going to get is Shining Mew, whose legendary guidance ability is 1 energy, and it lets you search your deck for 2 energy cards. Not even basic, just 2 energy cards, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So Psychic has options in keeping the attacks going, not just drawing cards and finding supporters.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than being able to draw cards, handpick a supporter, disrupt your opponent, and also be one of the 4 types with a Dynamotor. Zatu's an added bonus for those builds. And Shining Mew is really good, but I have to say, as my favorite deck is Lost Zone Psychic, I love the Shining Mew. Because I play Echoing Horn and whatever the second Echoing Horn is, Target Whistle. There was one game I knocked out that Shining Mew 3 times. I get so much joy when I see that little 30 HP fella come down. And people have since learned to super rod it away, but I'll never forget the times I've killed it 3 times.
Yeah, so one of the builds you're talking about is probably the Garbodor builds. They really, really play into the
That's
Shining
right.
Mew because they can't play any Pokemon with abilities. So you can't have Malamar or Xatu in those decks. And the only Psychic deck that Hitmon Bros, which is kind of my main deck, the only Psychic deck that I have a positive matchup into is the Garbodor decks, because the Shining Mew dies instantly to a Hitmonchan attack on the first turn.
And who needs abilities in fighting? We're just trying to greens anyway.
Well, talking about not having abilities, we were just talking about Garbodor. Garbodor has the Garbotaxin ability. If you have a tool attached to it, no abilities for anyone. And it doesn't need to be active. It doesn't need to be sitting on the bench. It can be, though, of course. It just needs to have a tool attached. And so there's so many tools in this format: retreat tools, HP buff tools, damage reduction tools. You know, Garbodor is going to be wearing something if you've built your deck correctly. And then the other one, which people hate and really, really have considered like getting out of this format, even though I think it's a little bit ridiculous, is Wobbuffet with the Bide Barricade. It has to be active in order for abilities to be turned off. It's just your opponent, so it's one-sided in that regard. And then its attack is actually kind of useful in some situations with the Psychic Assault attack.
Yeah.
It does 10 plus 10 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So a pretty good card overall.
I was trying to jam Psychic. Our season started in January, and I have gotten 4 or 5 badges, and one of them was not Psychic, which is embarrassing. And so I finally was like, "All right, Ray, I'm putting Wobbuffet in the deck." She's like, "Don't do it. The card is so ugly. Like, I have to do it. I want the Psychic badge." She's like, "Fine." And Wobbuffet solved it. I hate it, but it solved it. I hit Control the first round. I hit Water another round, and being able to sit behind the Wobbuffet and just slowly build up your bench, Psychic is gonna win the long game. You know, once you get the refinement, the Malamar, eventually the Gallade, it's able to do anything at that point. And Wobbuffet enables those plays so that other decks don't run over you. You can really slow down the game to your own pace.
I just wish
Yeah.
they would have given it to a better Pokemon. Like, why Wobbuffet?
What Pokemon do you want it on? A Shuckle? There's not a Psychic Shuckle.
There's not a psychic Pokemon. It could have been a lot of psychic Pokemon. Ah, Putting me on the spot. I can't name a basic psychic Pokemon that I love right now. But Wobbuffet is not it. And I feel like a lot of people can say that. Like just give it to something better. Give it
See,
to a Jirachi, like anything, a Celebi. They could make a Celebi.
Okay, Celebi,
thing.
yeah.
Like just a cool Pokemon. I know I'm only naming legendaries. There's other cool psychic basic Pokemon, but something other than Wobbuffet. It's just, especially the female one that has lipstick. It's just weird. Why?
I can't
love-
say that, but I
I
guess
love
you
this
can
card.
as a female.
So I love everything about this card. So, going back like when I was like 10 or 11, and Jesse and James in the anime had like their Wobbuffet that was just like a ridiculous Pokemon that didn't do anything at all in the anime, and like the fact that Wobbuffet just like gets to like turn off a Pokemon's abilities and is like super overhyped in this format. Just love it. Love, love, love. And I mean, come on, it's got lipstick. Like I love everything about this card. I will just like I will dress up as this card for Halloween. Like it's everything I've ever wanted in life.
Oh, you
is
have to do that.
Buy
Yeah.
Barricade Wobbuffet.
This Halloween, you're held to it.
All
Also,
right.
fun fact: the real Wobbuffet is the tail. So the blue thing that we see is actually the fake. That's the real tail. But you see those eyes on that tail to the left of the card?
Mhm.
That's the real Wobbuffet. For those of you that don't know.
Okay. All right. You learn something new every day.
He doesn't believe me.
I think it's on like the card of one of the Wobbuffets or something.
Yeah, it's a
or
Pokedex
a deck
entry.
entry. Yeah. That's
Mhm.
what it is.
And you'll
Okay.
never not see.
Well, moving on. Moving on to, I think, Zach, this is probably like one of your talking points, is the Psychic Lost Zone engine. We've got the Comfy with the flower selecting ability, just one of the best like card selection tools in the game. Like getting to look at two cards,
Mhm.
get rid of one so that your deck is thinned, and then just keeping the other one in your hand immediately. And then Sableye here, that for 1 energy uses its Lost Mine attack. If you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone, put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way. Like, pretty good.
It's so easy to do. If you're not hitting it by turn 3, something wrong happened. And if you build your deck to do it, you can really hit it turn 2. And no one ever believes me when I say that, but it is so true. I mean, and there's just so many different combos you can do with Comfy. The fact that we have U-turn board in this format is insane. The fact that we have Rotom decks, so you can choose what your top 5 cards are. You can Comfy and flower select away the bad one, hand select the good one, and then, oh, the remaining 3 were items, just Pokestop them into your hand. And those items might be able to build up your Lost Zone. You can find Colorless so easily. You only have to run 5 or 6 supporters, so you can have your what's it called? It's Pokegear, but from Expanded.
Pokegear from Expanded. Is it X Transceiver?
It's similar to that, but it lets you just look at the cards until you pull the first supporter. So you can play that, and you have a 20% chance of hitting the Colress's Experiment. So easy to recycle. I remember the first time I built it was when Lost Origin came out, because we started playing right around then, and Sableye is actually one of my top 5 favorite Pokemon. So I just built it because I love Lost Zone. I was playing it in Standard at that time. I love Sableye. I thought it was going to be a joke. You remember that? And then we
Yeah.
realized, wait, this can go off really consistently. It's to the point now I only play this deck once a quarter at locals because people give me grief and just say how much they hate this every single time I play it.
I think we had to ban it in the household for a time too.
It's still banned in my book. When's the last? We played this on our first stream ever, and that's it. It is never touched.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's a frustrating deck to play against. Not every deck has Bench Barrier, and Bench Barrier against damage counters is almost impossible. That Chimecho with the Silencing Bell ability, I don't know if you're playing it in your build. There's a Chimecho for 1 energy, does 10 damage, and then your opponent can't play Pokemon with abilities the next turn. And it's not like it's in the active and you can get rid of it. It's an effect of an attack. So like I'm just sitting there with my water deck, Sobble's on the bench, I've got Drizzile on hands. I can't do anything because of this stupid
Can't do anything.
Chimecho. I hate that Chimecho so much. It's a frustrating deck, and like you said, you don't think it's consistent because it's a singleton format, and there's not that many ways to put cards in the Lost Zone. And then all of a sudden, turn 2 and 3, like you mentioned, they got Colress, they Mewtwo'd the Colress back on top of their deck, they've used Comfy to flower select it back into their hand, and then it's just like it just spirals out of control so quickly. Then you throw in the horns. I mean, I don't want to talk too much because we are going to talk about the deck build a little bit later on. But man, Psychic Lost Zone, just another factor why Psychic is such a powerful, powerful player in the current GLC meta.
I'd say it better myself.
But the card that we were searching for was Random Receiver. That's the one where you flip until you find a supporter. All right. Hey, this is where I come in. Psychic spread decks are super fun outside of the Psychic Lost Zone. This is probably frustrating for some players too, but there are kind of two big players, maybe three if you count the Lunala in the Psychic spread game. So you've got Chandelure here, which gets played a lot in Dusk Buddy builds. Basically, if it's in the active, you put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you'd like. So it usually gets used in conjunction with Air Balloon or Float Stone, and then that way you always have a pivot as you're switching from your spreader that just got KO'd back into the Chandelure. So it can be kind of deadly with that. It's a lot more accurate than a lot of spread decks in the past have been, because now you get to kind of pick and choose where you put damage counters. It makes cards like TM Devolution a little bit better because of that. But it's definitely a solid card. It just takes some putting together. Like, you have to build around the Chandelure for the deck to be successful. And then on the other side is my favorite, Sinister Hand Dust Noir, which lets you just move counters around your opponent's Pokemon as you'd like. So you're just like, hey, there's 6 on Machamp, take all 6 of those off. We're going to put them on Manaphy. We're going to take another one, put on Manaphy. Oh, your bench barrier's down. All right, let's use Meloetta, take another couple KOs because we've set up our damage counters precisely. It's just so good.
It is. And it's funny because it's always a certain player, and I can tell from the way you're talking and that light in your eyes that you're one of them. But for us, it's Brad. And you always hate when you go
I
against Brad. You're
hate
like,
playing
I have to
Brad
hate
against
against
spread.
spread.
I was thinking about him.
Yeah.
He was talking. I'm like, man, Brad.
Shout out to
I
Brad.
love Brad. But I do not love playing this spread deck, especially with Dragon.
And it's a compliment because the most masterful people for spread can just board wipe you and just take you out of the game in one turn. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
It's beautiful and sad. Like, I feel bad doing it some games. Like we mentioned, not every type is balanced. Like, bench barrier isn't in every type. It hasn't been printed yet. And then there are some like super bench barriers. Like, there's the Fighting Machoke, that is just like OP. Like, it stops
Oh, yeah.
damage, it stops damage counters. And then you're just like Lightning, and like Lightning has Thunderous, and Thunderous needs to be in the active in order to prevent damage on, and you have like a 30 HP Dynamo like sitting on the bench just like precariously crying and like waiting not to die when you put up a Mew. So like it's just kind of bonkers.
Oh, yeah. It's tough for Lightning. The day I got my Lightning badge, I was bringing the Raichu that does damage to everything that has damage counters, including your own bench. And thankfully, I dodged Brad that day. If you like Psychic Spread, this is the one that feels like it competes the most. I've tried Grass Spread, and it's still built, but why? Psychic, Psychic and Lightning feel like just like the kings of spread, and with some shout outs to some other types, of course.
Okay, good stuff. You got to try Krabby Spread with Articuno Blindside.
There we go. You got me at Krabby. And of course, when we're talking about bench barrier, there's the type that has 2 of them.
Right? 2 bench barriers and 2 basic bench barriers. And so they're both Gen 1 Pokemon, so shout out to my 151ers. You've got Mew here, which is not only a good bench barrier, but for 1 energy, it puts 3 damage counters in any way on your opponent's Pokemon. So it's actually like a pretty reasonable attacker for its rate. But the problem is there's so many busted Mews, right? There's the Mew that can copy attacks of your Pokemon in play. There's the Mew that can get items off your deck. There's other Mews too that are doing things. So like, if you want to play a different Mew, well, just play the other bench barrier that this type has access to, Mr. Mime. And Mr. Mime is not a super great attacker, but you have a 70 HP, which 70 HP matters a lot for bench barrier, just because a couple of like snipe attacks that can get through usually do around 60, or like the max that people are spreading is usually 30 plus 30. So if your bench barrier does get turned off, that extra 10 HP can be quite useful for Mr. Mime.
And you can grab them with Poffin with that beautiful 70.
Often. So good. Love that card. Temporal Force is big boost for people who love to play bench barrier.
Yeah, actually, I think for both of our Psychic decks, we use the Mr. Mime as our bench barrier because we use 2 different Mews. We use the Unbroken Bond one in Lost Zone Psychic because it lets you copy the Sableye, protects around Lost City a bit. And then for our Psychic build, which I think we're actually getting into a little bit later, we love the Celebrations Mew.
Mm-hmm.
The Mew is just, it's got one of those cards that just has so many printings, so glad that Pokemon Company International has listened and put another ability on Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime might be another basic Pokemon to put an ability block on it too. So instead of Wobbuffet, we're thinking.
Yeah.
Are Wobbuffet's hands the Pokemon, or is it the actual whole thing?
Mr. Mime, he looks like he's the real Pokemon, but I kid you not, once you get to Mr. Rhyme, his evolution, It's actually his bottom half, and then his top part is a facade. So it's really funny you mentioned that.
That's great. That's great. What are your thoughts on bench bear? I say always play bench bear. Like if your type has access to a bench bear that's basic and good, and it has a lot of other consistency pieces involved in it, like you should always play bench bear. Like water and psychic have no excuse not to play bench bear in your decks. What are your thoughts?
If I'm at a regional open, I'm probably going to play bench barrier. And if I'm at my locals, shout out to Bohemian, who's one of the guys that made Turbo Raikou really good. So he makes it where we have to play bench barrier when we can. I will say I get greedy sometimes. So there are times where I do cut it from water or from some psychic builds. But if I have a bunch of little guys, like in Lost Zone Psychic, there's so many times I just lost zone to Mr. Mime, so I wish I could not play him. But you just need him. If you have a bunch of little guys and you can get board wiped in essentially 2 turns, I think it's essential. If you maybe have something like a Whale Lord and they're not playing Devolution, you could get away with it. But you're right. I think for the most part, don't be greedy. Try to find the space. It's just one card.
It's one card, and you can just trade it away with Kirlia, right? Like trade it away, draw two, like you mentioned, lost zone it. Like it's an easy decision to lost zone it. Like lost zone thing cards can be tough, but there are just cards in some matchups that are bad that you're just like, whoop, didn't have to think about it. That could be one of these cards, and in a good matchup, you could save you. So again, I'm a
Especially
big fan.
Curlia is so tough.
Right, right.
Sometimes a single prize format or a singleton format, I don't really even want to trade away anything in my hand. So you're right. It makes those decisions easier too.
Yeah, play bad cards so you can get rid of them. That's the whole point. Like it makes ultra balling and quick balling away things so much easier. Right? I only play bad
That's
cards,
right.
which is why my ultra ball decisions are always tough. I have to decide which cards are the worst cards, and then we go from there. Moving on with some more busted psychic cards. Not only do we have ability lock, we have energy acceleration, we have consistency engines in the form of Kirlia Gallade, we've got spread attackers and bench bearers, but we've also got discard recursion, and it's just too free for the beam, man. Like Gengar with Netherworld Gate here. Once it's in your discard pile, you just plop it on your bench and put 3 damage counters on it. Like you don't have to have a Ghastly or a Haunter, just a straight up stage 2 that pops itself back on the bench. And then it's Screaming Circle Attack, super useful too. Put 2 damage counters on your opponent's active for each of their bench Pokemon. So it can max out at 100, but it's just free. And then the other card over here, Giratina Distortion Door, actually very, very useful card, especially if you're playing like a spread strategy or you're trying to hit certain numbers. But Giratina basically says if it's in your discard pile, put it onto your bench. And then not only do you just get a Pokemon back onto your bench, but you can put 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So again, it's just kind of like setting up a blindside play potentially, hitting that 130 number that you need to so often. And then just for 3 energy, which again, Psychic can hit pretty easily. We mentioned Xatu and Malamar pumping energy from hand and discard pile. But it does 130 for 3 energy, and it just keeps coming back.
Never dies. It's like they're ghost types that are disguised as psychic or something. I was gonna say I know the Giratina is pretty popular. I think the Gengar is a little bit slept on, including by myself. You see it typically in Lost Zone Psychic, but it's not bad in just other things as well. If you're playing Compressor, 1 energy to be able to do essentially 60 to 100 is a little bit underrated because it is just 1 energy. So I don't know. I really appreciate the card in Lost Zone Psychic. I don't think I'd ever cut it there, but I really do wonder about it sometimes in other builds and wonder if it's a little bit of an underrated card.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I've definitely thought about that myself too. Like, should I maybe play it in my spread deck as like another option? Like, I can discard it away early, and then once I've got some spread damage going on, I can kind of bring it back and just take a cheap, easy, cheeky KO at times for 1 energy. Like you said, it's too free.
If it was in fire, it'd be in every deck.
If this was in fighting, like if this was in fighting, it would be so good. If this was in
Mm.
dragon, so good. But this is the problem with Psychic. It just, I mean, I say problem, but we should maybe air quote this. It just has everything. Like, what do you choose to play? You can only put 60 cards in your deck, and there are 4,000 good ones.
And if you have like 20 Pokemon, you're probably not going to be having great hands. So
Man, but Psychic could probably, if there's one type that could play with 20 Pokemon, like Psychic's just like, hey, they all just draw me cards or stop you from playing the game. Like, we'll be fine.
that's right.
Well, that's kind of like the big deal about psychic cards. There's some like type specific cards that I didn't quite get to adding to the Google slide or that we didn't quite have a chance to talk about, but we'll talk about them kind of in these lists coming up. So this is the Tinkaton list from Run Jamie Run, and Tinkaton is another good one that we haven't talked about yet. Tinkaton is an amazing attacker. So in this list, you've got Tinkaton as kind of like a focal point. Not only is it a great attacker, but it's also a pretty useful support Pokemon. So for 2 energy, it does 90. And if one of those energy happens to be a special energy, it does 90 more. So you're hitting 180 with the stage 2 pretty decent rate. Like you would expect your stage 2 to hit hard. But it's also just got a trade ability. Discard 1, draw 3. So now your big hitter, late game winner is also like one of your key engines to keeping your hand full and pushing you forward into the game. Well, you pair that with Gallade that we mentioned earlier. You've got Malamar as energy acceleration. You've got great basics in the form of Necrozma and Mewtwo. And Necrozma plays into that special energy ability too, because if it has a special energy, its special laser attack does 100 plus 60. So again, 160, another good number. So this build is kind of just like consistent. It's got Marshadow in the list, which we haven't even talked about yet. Like that's where the name of the podcast gets its name. Plop it on the bench, you and your opponent shuffle your hands into your deck and draw 4. So it disrupts, it draws, it hits big numbers, it can search up supporters. It's got Dimension Valley, which reduces attack costs by 1 colorless for your psychic Pokemon. It's like, what do you do with a type that's just playing good cards? And that is Psychic Mallet.
Yeah, in my opinion, this is the best deck in format. I don't think there's really much to change from this. You can try to personalize some of the lines, and we have, but really, once you get to like 2 stage 2s and the right amount of basics, there's a poetry and there's like a balance that you don't want to mess too much with. I think for us, we kind of got bored with it just because it's sort of solved, and maybe we're more of deck builders than
Yeah,
players.
we don't really stay with well, you don't really stay with one deck for too long. I like my dragons, but you like to build decks.
So I'd say if you're just getting started and you can buy like one deck. This is probably the way that I would go for Psychic. It's also just a good intro to the game because like Jeff was saying, you can essentially do anything. Whether it's the disruption of, all right, I'm gonna parallel and hex you, I'm gonna Iono you to 1, and hand select it. Also, a trade for 3 is insane. Like trade for 2 is good, but trade for 3 is just so insane. And then you're hitting for 180. I mean, so if you have the 180, you have the muscle band and the hex, you're one hit killing a whale lord, for example. And I'm not sure if that's in this list, but I will say that's one thing that's important for me is in all of these lists, I do like a muscle band. But yeah, muscle band to make a 200 is so good because grass and water are just inherently popular. In fact, I think that was your first podcast episode.
Yeah.
So being able to one hit kill a Torterra or a whale lord because you went hex muscle band with one of these fellas is just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. That 200 has become more of an important number as water and grass's popularity has grown. I'm still a big fan of Dragapult. Like these lists are kind of like
Yeah.
the evolution, so to speak, wordplay intended, of what Dragapult used to be. And Dragapult, for those of you who don't know, has the Infiltrator ability, which is when your opponent attacks it and deals damage to it, you can flip a heads to basically negate all the damage. And then for 2 energy, it was 2 psychic. You do 120 to the active, and then I think you get to place, it's either 20 or 30. I can't remember how much it ended up being, and I might be wrong on the actual attacks there, so don't quote me 100% on that. But it was just kind of busted, like what that card could do. It wasn't a great support mon, but like just flipping a couple heads here and there, like it already had 150 HP, so like it was in that zone where it's a little tough to kill. But the fact that it had its ability just made it so fun to trade back and forth. Like you could go an entire game and just sweep the Dragapult if you were lucky enough. And I'm a gambling man, so give me my Dragapult.
Oh, and that's the other thing too. Both lines give you a chance against Dark because Tinkaton's weakness is Steel, and then with Dragapult you can flip correctly and negate the knockout. So, not too many types that can do that.
Yeah, Psychic. I think we might have talked about this last week. Water has a pretty good match up into its weakness because of bench barrier, like with lightning doing damage to the bench. I think psychic might have maybe the second best matchup into its weakness, just for that fact. Like you have a couple different mons that have different weaknesses, so you can kind of diversify what your threats look like, and then just get lucky, flick some heads on your Dragapult, and you're fine.
Martyr Shadow them to 4. Hope they break. You'll be okay.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. There's a deck in Magic. Again, I'm an old Magic player from back in the day. That's just called Jund, and it just used to play good cards. So whenever I think about Psychic Mallet and what these kind of traditional Psychic lists have become, I just think back to the decks that played good cards. Like there's not a lot of synergy. It's just playing cards that are good.
Okay, so you're old Magic. I'm old Yu-Gi-Oh. For us, that was cookie cutter chaos. So if you are coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic background, now you know.
Now you know. Now you know the references. I don't know if this next deck has any other card game kind of analogies or similarities, so to speak, which is Dust Buddy. And it's coming to us from Watto, who's a champion of Fairy, but he took a break from beating people with Fairy to make this sweet list featuring Chandelure. And it's interesting because it is a spread deck, but like we mentioned, it's a little bit more accurate with the way it goes about things. So Chandelure, of course, is a focal point. You attach your retreat tool to it, and then you can use it as a pivot as you go back and forth. You've also got Miss Magus for 1 energy, puts 2 damage counters on everything. You've got Azelf, if a Pokemon is already damaged, it puts 2 damage counters on it. You got Meloetta that can spread up to 3, but also 0 because you flip 3 coins to determine 10 times the amount of damage you do. And then, you just got good old Blacephalon, which if it's that good old 3 prize turn, you just get to do the Sableye attack. Put 12 damage counters wherever you want. So it's a spread deck again, but it just goes about it in kind of a unique way. Like it's not taking 6 prize turns. It's going to take 2 or 3 prize turns here and there, and then try to finish out the game with maybe Gallade taking some KOs, maybe Wobbuffet taking some KOs because its attack is pretty useful since it does more damage based on damage counters. And then this card, which I'm going to pronounce terribly, is it Neoligo? Neolego? Neoligo?
You know?
I think you actually are pretty close. I think it is Niligo or
Cool.
like it's a good question.
Yeah. But we'll call it Niligo for now. But for 1 energy, its Nightcap attack basically lets you copy any attack if your opponent is down to 2 prize. That over the other copycat attacker, which is Mimikyu. A lot of lists play Mimikyu. This list is opted for Niligo. So yeah, it's fun. I liked it. I've played it before. I obviously prefer Dusk Noir builds. Watto swears up and down that this is one of the most consistent builds in all of Psychic, just with the fact that he's playing Timer Ball, Ultra Ball, all these different balls that kind of help him get set up. And then he's playing Apricorn Maker and he's playing Ball Guy as ways to make sure that he can get his evolution since they're so key to this deck.
Yeah, I don't know about the Apricorn Maker. I'm sorry, Watto. It's Ball Guy, but you only grab 2 balls. We don't even play Ball Guy
You
anymore.
lost me at Timer Ball.
Is there a more hated card in this format than Timer Ball? Or maybe a more divisive card than Timer Ball?
I always flip tails for everything, so.
Yeah, why does Silene feel better than Timer Ball even?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I tend to agree a little bit more with Watto because evolutions are so important to this, that you could play Apricorn Maker only for the fact that sometimes you need to get like your evolutions over a card like Bridget and Gloria. So if your deck was maybe playing Bridget, Gloria, Clavel, and maybe those cards aren't super great for getting evolutions, you could probably go Apricorn Maker, but it is a worse card than Ball Guy. It is typically a worse card than one of the others I just mentioned. If Hisuian Heavy Ball is really important for your deck too. Like if you need to get a basic off of your prizes, then I can also see Apricorn Maker. But I think Arvin has kind of filled that niche as another way to get HHB if you need it.
I'll say this is one of the cool types because this can be personalized. There's actually a lot of good spreaders within Psychic. Our buddy that does play Dusk Buddies actually still plays the Dusk Noir in it. I'm not sure how he has the room, but this is one that has some individuality that you can add to it for sure.
Yeah. And the fact that they do damage counters instead of damage is another key point of all Psychic spread decks. Just because like Bench Bear says specifically negate damage, well, these are not damage. It's an effect of an attack, which is also another reason why all these Psychic spread decks are really bad in the Snorlax, because Snorlax prevents effects of attacks.
That's right. You have to have the Hex.
Well, Brought a list up. It's not yours, Zach. We're bringing up Psychic Lost Zone. This is a list coming to us from Stack Attack. I'm going to let you kind of talk us through Psychic Lost Zone because this is your baby. You don't have to talk us specifically through this list, but you can just tell us Psychic Lost Zone in a nutshell. What are you doing? What are you trying to do?
This list looks good to me. You're playing a really item-heavy turbo deck where you can just draw through everything, make sure you find the pieces at the right time. And like I said, you should have 10 in the Lost Zone by turn 3. If not, something went wrong. Not necessarily you, it could be bad draws and things like that. And if you're a really good pilot and have a little bit of luck, you can get it on turn 2 more often than your opponent will think and just kind of wipe the board. Outside of the turbo items, the bicycles, the trekking shoes, and things like that, you want to make sure you have a couple consistency items. So as you're piloting, make sure you don't get rid of too many recovery cards. A lot of Lost Zone people in both Standard and GLC will overcook themselves and just realize, okay, I took a couple prizes. Oops, I have 2 cards in my deck and I have no more resources. So be mindful of things like that while you're going. This one also has room for a lot of personalization. I would say there's probably about 10 cards that you can really do differently. There's probably a 50 core. So you can choose, do I want cards that interact with my prizes? I'll tell you, I personally don't, actually. I have gone to 10 without Colorless Experiment in my deck before. You revive the Comfy, you bring it back. You have to really make sure you get your items the right way. And there's also a couple other interesting arguments because as new cards come out, are they better? So I see this build has Buddy Poffin. I just still play Nest Ball. Oh, this has both. That's interesting. But the interesting thing with Buddy Poffin is you can't get the Sableye with it. However, you can get the early Esper, the early Bennett, evolution guy. What's his name? Shuppet. You can get the early Shuppet, Comfy. So it's interesting. Some people don't play the horns. And then something that doesn't see any play at all is de-evolution, which is honestly really good in this deck. I've won a couple games against Grass and Water because I had that in the early days. I've since become greedy and cut it. Don't tell anyone that I play against. But there's a lot of different ways you can go with this, and that's really exciting. But really, Sableye is your attacker. I think if you're trying to do much more than that, you're going to just lose consistency from hitting that turn 3 or turn 2. But it's such a fun deck, really annoying to play against. So to that, you can solitaire it yourself and just kind of get the sequencing down that way. Because I will say, this deck probably takes a couple days, like playing like 5 games a day, to get the reps down to get it at a pretty good level.
All other decks should play Lost City because of this deck. And there are a few other decks, but this deck especially, Lost City, kills it.
Mm-hmm.
There is that, yeah. I'm at the point I play Chaotic Swell. I play the item card that bounces it back to your hand. Do you remember what that's called? Rescue Scarf? And then I also play the Mew from Boundaries, so that way I can try to have him in the active. And everyone locally still plays Lost City because they're a bunch of bullies and lose Mew.
As a Hitmon Bros player, it makes me sad that people are teching in Lost City because we are unintentionally getting hit by that card because it also stops the game plan in Hitmon Bros. Now, like you mentioned, there's a couple of like interesting choices here, and actually the basics that evolve into the evolutions in the Psychic Lost list or Lost Zone list are pretty interesting because, like, for example, there's 2 Shuppets that are pretty good to play, both of which come up kind of often. Like there's the Shuppet that item locks, and then there's the Shuppet that discards a special energy. What's your go-to typically when you play looking for at your basic Shuppet?
I use the discard a special energy, because the attack name is Bleh. So you can say, all right, bleh, to your opponent. And honestly, discarding special energy is so good, whether it's into Dragon, into Colorless, into Psychic. It comes up, and it still has a surprise factor. A lot of people don't expect you to be attacking with the Shuppet.
Yeah, 100%. It's happened to me before, and I've just cried softly in a corner because my special energy is now gone. Now, the other interesting choice with this list is they're playing the Chimecho with the Auspicious Tone ability, which just goes and grabs a supporter. So, like, they are obviously more in on consistency here, trying to get Colorless Experiment out of their deck into their hand as often as possible. But, like I mentioned earlier, that Elf Silence Chimecho is the most hated card. I hate it so much. I will buy all of them and burn them. Like, that's how I feel about that when it comes to that Chimecho. So, I think a lot of people aren't specifically playing that Chimecho because they want friends and they want people to play against. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Auspicious Tone Chimecho is better.
There's one other cool card I don't see in list, but back when we had less good cards in the format a year and a half ago, I loved. There's a Mimikyu that its attack is you can use a supporter in your hand. And so a lot of times you can play your Colorless for your supporter for your turn and then get it right back into your hand with a variety of things. I used to love that thing. So that's an extra 2 in the loss zone for your attack for turn. And because an important part with this deck is you're not attacking until about turn 3 normally. So
Mhm.
you can take off in the beginning and use the Gengar that we mentioned from Lost Origin or something like that Mimikyu. I've seen the Meloetta that does spread damage. Not a big fan of that, but that's an option. You play that instead of the Gengar normally. So yeah, a lot of different ways to go and still a lot of room for creativity.
Again, you're going to be taking multi-prize turns at some point in the game, so falling behind early, not an issue. In fact, sometimes it kind of helps your gameplay. All right, next list. Again, I feel like there's so much. We're already an hour into this, and we've only talked Psychic. Colorless might have to wait. We'll see. But Turbo Garb is
It's
another
okay. There's
list.
only one colorless deck anyway.
these are facts. I wish it
True.
wasn't true. But Turbo Garb here.
Sorry.
We talked about Garbodor and its Garbotoxin ability, basically shutting down all abilities if it has a tool. And so since it can't play Pokemon with abilities, it's playing just kind of a slew of pretty good attackers. It's that Necrozma that we talked about earlier, Nilego. It's got Mimikyu as well as a copycat attacker, no ability again. And then it's got two kind of interesting Pokemon, Golurk, which can do a lot of damage. I think it can do 160 and 190. And then Deoxys here that does 80 plus 80 more if it has a Fusion Strike energy attached. So game plan basically is get your tiny, cute, shining Mew into the active with 30 HP. Attach energy to one of your other attackers. Again, it can get any energy from your deck and attach it. So you're playing like DCEs, Twin Energy. You've got that Fusion Strike. So you can power up an attacker in a single turn. And then while you're getting your attacker set up, you're hoping to also shut off your opponent's abilities with Garbodor. And of course, it needs a tool. So you're playing cards like Arven and Goose Hala to make sure you've got tools into your hand early. And then since you want to protect Garbodor, since basically your whole game plan is making sure your opponent can't play the game, you want to run things like Luxurious Cape and Bodybuilding Dumbbells to kind of slow that down. Saw a new printing too that kind of overshadows a little bit the Shining Muse ability is Turbo Energizer got printed recently. So you can also have another out that doesn't give up a prize in the form of Turbo Energize. And those are honestly my least favorite starts for the deck because that means I don't get that free 30 HP KO.
Yeah, please keep the 30 HP in there. I beg you.
If you're
If
listening to
Luxurious Cape didn't keep Field Blower in your deck, it's this one. This is one of those decks you get so punished if you don't have Field Blower, and then you're kicking yourself like, oh, I thought it'd be okay this one time without it. It was my 61st card. Oh no.
Yes, bench bearers and field blower. Those are base rules to deck building. Like you start with your list with a cool idea. No, start it with field blower. Start it with your bench barrier.
At this point, yeah, you got to have the Field Blower.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it just doesn't matter because your field blower can only be used one time a game, right? Like, let's be honest here, getting tools back is one of the hardest things to do in all of the Pokemon TCG. Like, Silene exists, but Silene is a bad card, especially when your deck can't play abilities because you're shutting them all off. So, on top of that, like, you use your field blower, hopefully you get a good turn off, but if you can't deal with a Garbodor that turn, they're just going to attach another tool. I think this list is playing like six different tools. So like it's going to happen quite frequently. You got to deal with the Garbodor. And it's kind of annoying because it has 100 HP. A lot of snipe effects do 90. So that 10 extra HP is kind of annoying in all honesty.
Yeah, you pretty much have to hold it while you have the Gust in play at the same time. But then at the same time, your hand can just get Marshadowed. So you can hold it and then, back into the deck it goes.
Well, you can't get Marshadowed if Garbodor's out. So there's at least a positive.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You just get Marnied instead.
But that's how good Marshadow is, just for people wondering about how good Marshadow can be. The deck that literally shuts off abilities is still like, it's worth it.
So true.
All right, this is another list that Zach and Ray, you're going to talk us through. It's a list I'm not super familiar with. I know it's got Malamar, and I know it's got Xatu in it, but this is Psychic Birds.
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight this deck as a way to show off the Xatu engine, because I think this one's a little underrepresented. I do think the Tinkaton deck is just slightly better, but kind of like we said a couple minutes ago, in terms of being a deck builder, it's more fun to just try to work with unexplored ideas. So do you want to talk a little bit about how we came up with this one?
You want me to play another deck other than
Dragon?
other than Dragon, Water, or like some of the others? I'm like, all right. And he's like, how would I build a psychic deck for you I'll leave the Wobbuffet out. This one has it, but at the time
Sorry.
he left it out. Yeah, very disappointing when he put it. Because I hate Wobbuffet. So he's like, I'll only build it with Pokemon that you like. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So he did, and he put Tinkaton in. He put Mew, especially like specifically that art I'm in love with.
The Celebrations Mute, which was a Christmas present to me, by the way.
I mean, Dragon was a Christmas present to you too.
That's right. Dragons was a Christmas present to me. Oh, my goodness.
The Zatsu, I really liked when I did pre-release with it. So he built this deck so that I'd play another deck, and that's just kind of how it came to be. And then when he needed to play it, he changed a few things so that he'd actually win with it. But
Yeah, I took out the Tinkaton line. It was a little bit too clunky. Cardboard Warrior, shout out them, said, "How do you, set up consistently with all these evolution lines?" And that's why I was going 2-1 the other 2 weeks. So a couple things. I put in the Battle Compressor, which is wicked good because I play a Battle VIP Pass and Buddy Poffin because I have the CEL Mew, so I can find them easily. And if I don't, whatever, just throw it away. And then also I have the Espathra. I put it in here because it's one of her favorite
I love
types.
this.
And it's a Garchomp Light. So once you evolve it, use its ability so you're indestructible for a turn, forcing them to have the Gust. And if you have a Tulip in the discard, preferably because you played it, but you can also compressor it away, it does 140, which is a respectable amount. But there's so many times where a game will be one prize to one prize, and so if you can cheat away a prize, you can just win from that. But oh man, the CEL Mew is just so busted being able to grab items. So it's a pretty supporter light deck because you can draw cards with the Curlia still. You can draw cards with the Zatu. That's the other thing. It's not just an energy accelerator, it's a draw too. And we only play one special energy. So we have something like 8 or 9 basic. It's got to be 8. 9 would be insane. 8 basic psychic energies. Lots of ways to be able to find it. And kind of similar to the Tinkaton list, you're just able to find the cards when you need to. And then the coolest sniping card, and this was the third card I put in to cut when I cut the Tinkaton, is the Galarian Articuno. So you can bench it, and it'll auto-accelerate 2 psychics to itself. And then once you attach that third one for turn, it does 120 to snipe. So if you gust a big guy, like against Metal, for example, is how I got the badge. I put a Celesteela in the active and then just started gusting. If you don't have your engines up, if something just did not go to plan, you can tool up for this and 3 energies, and it just powers up itself. So great card. And then finally the Latios, which does 180 for 3, but doing 3 energy here is just so easy. And same kind of strategy we talked about before. You have the Muscle Band, you have the Hex, you're killing everything in the format. So it's a really fun deck. I really like having just the basic Psychic energy. I think Espathra is a little bit underexplored as well. It is a stage 1. I get evolving stinks, and it's better to play basics, but you still have all the same tools. The things I forget to mention: you have the Wobbuffet, you have the Mimikyu, you have the Gallade, so you still have your basic tools at your disposal, but you have a couple tricks as well. And so even if you don't go with this, you don't go with this Espathra, there is a huge advantage to when your opponent doesn't know your 60. So if you net deck something, you lose a little bit of something. If you have your own spice, people might have discarded the escape rope because they didn't know what Espathra did, or you didn't bench the Flittle. So something to say about with Psychic, there's so many good cards. Don't be afraid to make your own. Try different engines, and check out Zatu, underexplored engine.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said there, because Psychic has all these good cards. It's a brewer's dream Psychic type. On top of that, like the Espathra build, like you mentioned, there's like a lot of invulnerable builds out there too. Like people really love it when their Pokemon can't die. The Garchomp that you mentioned that he's playing Dragon. There's Dragapult that I mentioned earlier. There's the Greninja that has the same kind of like flip ability that Dragapult has, the Infiltrator ability. So people love the invincible abilities. Does it always pay off? I don't know. Your opponent might have Hex, might have an ability lock, and then all of a sudden, sometimes those things don't work quite as well. Is Stance on evolution like Garchomp, where it's kind of like a status effect?
Exactly. So they have to hex the turn before, which makes it really good.
Oh yeah. So that makes it like so much better. But love the list. I need to try it out. Latios is a card too that I really liked, especially in Malamar Zatu builds, just because like you have so much energy acceleration, the discarding doesn't matter too much. And then the Galarian Articuno that you mentioned was a card that I loved to play back when Archeops was a thing, because you could just snipe the Archeops or snipe the Arcan. Your deck needed an out to Archeops, and we'll talk more about like what cards Colorless has gotten banned coming up. Archeops not being one of them, but effectively getting banned through another means. But Galarian Articuno was one of the techs to run against Archeops when it was just demolishing everything in the format. Well, all right. Other Psychic lists that we're just going to brush over because that's where we're at. Spread decks exist. We didn't show a spread deck outside of Dusk Buddies, but Dusk Noir builds, Lunala builds. I wrote a sweet article. I think it's sweet about a Dusk Noir build. Go check it out. It's up on Cardboard Warriors website. The Invincible builds that I mentioned, Dragapult, we showed a little bit of a Spathra there, but there are other builds out there as well. And then a deck that I think I need you two to talk about because I have really no idea too much what it's about, but there's some Psychic control lists out there. And the one that has most recently been successful is a deck that I think someone from your locals has put together, a deck called Gothmom.
Yeah, I hate the name, Joe, but I love and hate the deck. We all traveled together to NAIC, I guess last year. Don't ask me how it went. I played a V Union at a serious tournament. Why? Sometimes I brew too hard. But in terms of that night, we had fun, and I got my buddy into GLC just playing Psychic. For me, I took kind of the standard Tinkaton list, but instead of the Tinkaton, I still had all the good stuff, but I wanted to try out Gothmom. So for those of you that don't know, she has two redeeming qualities. The ability is Read the Stars. And you get a look at the top two cards of your opponent's deck, put one of them on top, one of them on the bottom. So it's a great way to control the top deck. The attack does a pretty good amount of damage. I forget exactly what it is, but it's in the hundreds. It's a respectable amount. And you're probably going to take a kill. And it also discards a card from the hand. So essentially, you make the person not play the game. So if you're playing against Joe, what he does is he Marsh Shadows you turn 1. He always finds it. If it's prized, there's the Hisuian Heavy Ball. If it's not, you just play Level Ball or something for it. You both kind of brick for a while, but for some reason he draws out of it. Rare candies to the Gothmom. Discard your hand with that, and then there's all kinds of disgusting trainer cards in GLC like Delinquent and things like that. So really, you're not playing the game by turn 2 or 3. It's miserable to play against, but it wins all the time because unfortunately, it is really good. So it's one of the most annoying and amazing control decks I've ever seen.
I feel like as we've been talking about Psychic, like the word that has come up more than anything is like, oh, hey, yeah, there's all these great cards. And then we were like, annoying. It's annoying.
Yep.
Like Psychic is a frustrating type. Like it's kind of like the Confuse Ray. Like you're walking through the Zubat cave in one of the Pokemon games, and all of a sudden, like all your Pokemon are confused, and you just keep doing damage to yourself. Like that's what Psychic kind of does to you. It's the Zubat cave of Gym Leader Challenge.
That's exactly it.
It's a great way to put it.
So how do we go about this? All right, Psychic is one of the best types. It's got all of these busted cards. It seamlessly has like just no weakness on the outside because it gets to play just some of the best cards and it can find them easily. Like Hex Maniac is a really good card, turns off all of your abilities. Well, not every deck can play it because not every deck has a chance to fight it. Well, hey, Psychic can just do that. So when we're going up against the Psychic deck, what do we need to do?
I wish I was kidding here, but if I think the field is Psychic, I will play Psychic. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's because A, you can recover from the Marshadow a little bit easier, and then B, the Wobbuffet doesn't affect you. So you can still not be slowed down by that. The second, and probably the more obvious answer, is to play Dark. So being able to hit for weakness, it can matter. We talked about in the beginning, though, it's not an auto win. If they have things like Tinkaton, it's a different type. And sometimes they can just set up better because they have all these consistency cards, and Dark has Lipard. you have just your trade.
Discard 1, draw 2.
I think. Yep. And I think the third thing too is Psychic can be a little bit slower. So if you have a faster deck, you can outpace them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
What do you think?
the Psychic Dark matchup is really key on the Guzzlord turn. You can hit Guzzlord, you're good. But if they hold Guzzlord in hand and then power it up with Beast String and double colorless, you're cooked.
The only other thing I can add is Lost City. Lost City, Lost City, Lost City.
Lost City is your answer to everything. It's a good card.
There's a lot of people who play Recovery, and if you can't play Recovery, then you win.
Well, what do you do into Psychic with Dragon?
You lose,
Really?
usually.
That's not a great endorsement.
It isn't. Unless you can get the donk, then it's usually not a great matchup.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of unfortunate. You have to just get lucky. But that's just Dragon in general. Psychic is really established, so they can often get their engine running. Like it's a really good type as we've established. So and Psychic against it really is what makes the most sense.
Yeah, Psychic, Turbo Dark. I mean, you mentioned Dark 2 is just another deck I'm going to run at. Like, if I can throw Spiritombs and Hoopas at Psychic continuously, like, I feel like I have a pretty good matchup since I'm obviously going to be taking KOs with those due to weakness at times. Obviously, there's some that have resistance. Fighting doesn't really stand a chance. Fire doesn't really stand a chance, in all honesty. This
Oh,
just
God.
Fire
it's
doesn't
just
stand a
too.
chance against anything.
I
Oh,
have
poor
to say,
Fire.
the time that I tried, I almost got my fire badge, and then I hit Psychic my last round, and it was that Goth Mom one. You know, the best counter to Macargo is someone controlling your top deck. It is the most miserable game I've ever played in my life.
That's brutal. That's brutal. Yeah. Macargo does not play well into top deck manipulation. Oh gosh, I did not even think about that when you were telling me about that deck. Um, it's just so hard because Psychic, it's just good. And when it's just good and when everything in it is good, how do you attack it and what do you go after? And if you're going after Gallade, then you're not going after one of the attackers. And if you're going after one of the attackers, then you're not going after one of the energy accelerants, which they can then just recover an attacker and pop it down on the bench. So you have to be faster than them, which again was a key that we all talked about. Getting the donk with Dragon, getting the donk with something else is great. It's one of the reasons why fighting has such a tough time. Even though fighting can hit hard and fast, the resistance comes into play. You're doing 30 less damage and you're not taking those KOs the same way you would with another deck. Colorless plays really well into Psychic. Stopping effects of abilities, not needing abilities to accelerate. Put your Snorlax in the active, attach 2 energies to it, one being a double, and then just go to town. 150 HP, 180 damage, like you're KOing everything, and then hey, go from there. Water and Grass, which are 2 of the better decks and most popular decks in the format, just fold to ability lock and early hand disruption. So Marshadow just making them shuffle their cards into their deck and going to 4, and then getting a Wobbuffet into the active is just, I don't want to say a death sentence because you can fight back from it, but like Grass not being able to use Grottle is huge. And Water not being able to use Shady Dealings just sets them back like 2 or 3 turns. Can they recover from that? Yeah, they're powerful types. But Psychic is going to keep putting its game plan together while it's doing all of this. And everyone wants to play Grass and Water. So it's just got a good matchup into most fields just because of the popularity of certain types. It's good.
Yeah, Grass is so strong because it can play off the board, but then Wobbuffet says, no, you can't.
So how do you beat it? The answer is sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
If you really want to, play Psychic or Dark. Maybe Colorless.
Or Colorless. Colorless makes sense,
Yeah.
too.
Speaking of which.
Segue.
Hey.
Let's talk Colorless. So Colorless is probably, it's up there for best type. I think it's easier to pilot than Psychic is, which I think helps it get to maybe like S tier status if we're talking about a tier list of Pokemon. But let's just hop into some of these overly powerful cards. So if Psychic has a lot, and Psychic has a lot of cards that do great things, the colorless card pool that's playable in GLC is less, but the quality is still there. I would say almost equivalent to what you're going to see in a Psychic deck. It's just you have less choices. So Snorlax here, I think most people would say, and I'm going to say it right now, is that Snorlax is the best attacker in the Gym Leader Challenge format. 150 HP on a basic. Prevent all effects of damage done to this Pokemon from your opponent's attacks. And then Thumping Snore for 3 energy does 180, and it puts itself to sleep, but that's not even a really big downside because switch cards exist, therapeutic energy exists, which basically makes it recover from sleep and makes it not be able to be put to sleep. All these other cards exist. You can throw a Lux Cape on it. Like Snorlax, in my opinion, the best attacker in the Gym Leader Challenge format. Thoughts?
It never has a card represented the video game so well. In Gen 1, when you're stuck behind the Snorlax, and you're like, well, why can't I just get around the Pokemon? It's this guy. This is the thing that's blocking our success to GLC sometimes, because you can have an okay hand, but your opponent goes first, they attach to Snorlax turn 1. It doesn't even have to be the double colorless. There's like 3 more of them in the deck. They'll find it. They'll find it in the future. And so it can just run you over before you even start the game. The threat of them is huge. You can play so many things to boost the HP, and even if you don't make him a 2 prizer with the Lux Cape, if you play Cape of Toughness or the reprinted Cape of Toughness, which is called something Charm, 200
Charm.
HP on a basic. Thank you. Yeah, It's just insane. So I think I agree. I think he probably is the best attacker in the game. If you were to think of Magic, this would be the commander of colorless decks. If you don't have him in, you better have a reason. Even if you're playing something like Spread or some of the more niche things, you want to be able to clean up big guys. This is your commander.
Yeah. Snorlax is the reason why copycat attackers are super popular right now within a lot of decks. Like one of the reasons why psychic decks basically need to run Mimikyu is that, hey, Snorlax comes in, KOs something of yours. Well, you can just 2 energy attach to Mimikyu and snap back at a Snorlax for 180. Play your copycat attackers basically for this card. I don't, you're looking at this card. We've talked about like what makes it so good. People look at this card and they're like, I don't understand what makes it so good. But like 3 energy doing 180 on a basic that's also going to survive any early attacks is just a way for decks to run over other decks. Like this Snorlax is built to take out stage 2s. Like it's built to compete with EX and V stars and
Yeah.
whatever in the format. So it's coming into our lowly non-rules box singleton format and just like decimating like all my evolution Pokemon. And it just makes me sad that I've spent so many resources. I've attached 2 energy to my Torterra. It's 3 stages at this point: basic, stage 1, stage 2, and then he's attached Fighting Fury Belt to it, and my Torterra is gone, guys. My Torterra is gone.
Worked so hard on them, and yep, X-Maniac.
I think
Goodbye.
it's worth emphasizing too that it's 3 energy, but not really, because Colorless has so many energies that actually count as 2. So it's really usually a 2 energy attached sort of deal with
Yes.
Snorlax.
Or Raihan Mela, go get the energy attached in 1 turn.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, if you're wondering what makes Snorlax so good, that's why. Now, the second reason why I think that Colorless, even though it doesn't have this plethora of quality of cards, it does have, like, I think the best draw engine of the entire format in terms of how
Yep.
many cards it gets to look at per turn. So there's this on my screen, there's 3 kind of not impressive cards when you look at them individually, or not unique cards when you look at them individually, but when they work in tandem, they just let Colorless see like 5, 6, maybe upwards of 7 cards a turn, which allows them to get answers from their deck to mitigate what you're trying to do on your side of the battlefield. So Skwovet here has the Nest Stash ability. Basically, take your entire hand, shuffle it up, put it on the bottom, draw 1 card. Not impressive, not good. Then you pair it with Oranguru here, who has the Instruct ability, which lets you draw up to 3. Well, hey, you just put your hand on the bottom of your deck, you've drawn 1 card. Maybe you've played that. Now you get to look at 3 brand new cards that aren't from the bottom of your deck. Then Bibarel here, in conjunction with all this, lets you draw up to 5. So if you've played any cards from your hand after you've Owen Guru, do you get to look at maybe 3 or 2 more cards? Maybe you played a whole bunch and you're getting 5 brand new cards. Like, it's just ridiculous how these 3 cards, 2 of them basics, 1 of them a stage 1, all just sitting on your bench, let you get to look through and churn through your deck to find Field Blowers, to find Hex Maniacs, to find Palpads, to put things back into your deck. It's just impressive, and it just doesn't look that way. But when you see an action, you're just blown away by what Colorless can do with this 3-card combo.
I think the 2 things I'd add too is that I think we get into this later, but Skwovet can actually evolve into a really powerful attacker in his own right. Even though that's not super popular, it should be, in my opinion. And then the second thing is you're not discarding the resources. Because, we have a disagreement there. But the Skwovet just puts it on the bottom. So you can save your Field Blower, you can save your Hex, your other important resources. You're not refining them away. So you can save them for when you really need them.
Yeah. Because like a card like Professor's Research has a real cost to it. Discard, draw 7 is a really good effect, but sometimes you're discarding things away that you would hope that you could save for late game. So with Skwovet, Oranguru, and Bibarel, you're never having to make that tough decision, and you're getting to look at effectively the same amount of cards. So kudos to this draw engine. But again, like, I'm playing fighting over here on my side of the field. I don't get to draw any cards. They have weakness, but the birds have resistance to fighting. So they're drawing so many cards. They're resistant to me for whatever reason. And they're beating down on my Hitmonchans. And I'm just going to cry sadly over here in the corner. It's a lot of what my GLC experience is just crying while playing fighting.
Well, if you just liked a different type, you
Yeah.
might cry a little less.
Like maybe Hitmons aren't the way to go.
Oh, best deck in the format. We don't choose who we love. All right, it chose
Fair,
us.
Yeah,
fair.
you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Well, all right. If you thought that those 3 draw cards weren't enough, well, hey, here's some other ones that you can check out in the colorless format. You got Cinchino, which is a trade ability, discard 1, draw 2. Pidgeotto with the Airmail ability, which is got some synergies with some other cards, like maybe some of the fossil mons that you want to put on the bottom of your deck. Again, it lets you store resources, but Airmail lets you look at the top 2, choose one, put it into your hand. The other one goes on the bottom. And then Dodrio here, which hasn't been getting as much love as I thought it would, but you draw a card with it and you put a damage counter on it. And then its attack is pretty bonkers when you consider what its ability is doing, is that it does 10 plus 30 more for each damage counter on it. So this Dodrio is just kind of sitting there drawing you cards, and then for 1 energy can kind of take a big KO on something that's kind of big and beefy. It's going to die on the backswing because it's been putting in damage counters on itself, but it's still pretty good at what it's doing. So, 3 other
Yeah.
good options to draw.
If you come from a TCG background where you love drawing cards like me, then Colorless is your deck because you have so many different ways. What I like about the Dodrio is that it's a drawer that can also be a sneaky attacker. So I do think that card's underexplored. And don't sleep on Energy Assist on the Cinchino. The 40 and being able to attach one of the fire to your bench Snorlax is also very strong. So you don't see these in the typical build because the best colorless build right now is just turbo colorless. But keep these cards in mind for maybe if you're listening to this podcast in a year from now and some things are changing in the metagame. You have access to these really strong cards in your card pool.
And birds, colorless birds is a thing. So Pidgeotto and Dodrio here, both being birds. Lugia is a bird. So colorless birds might be something that's up your alley, and these cards will definitely help you draw. All right. Acceleration of energy. Well, we got 2 of the better ones here. And the great thing about colorless energy accelerants is that they accelerate special energy. So Archeops, which used to dominate the format, like I'm talking like 60 to 70% win percentage, with its primal turbo ability, to search up any 2 special energy and attach them to 1 Pokemon. So with Archeops on your bench, Snorlax is powered up in 1 turn, and it's got therapeutic energy on it, which means it can't go to sleep. So you've just got that great attacker charged up instantaneously. And then next turn, if your Snorlax survives it's got another one that's charged up and ready to go. It was playing the Aerodactyl that was pretty good. I think the Aerodactyl did like 180 damage. It was playing Kangaskhan in that list too. So you're just powering up all these powerful attackers in 1 turn with Archeops. The only real issue came is that you had to make sure you counted your energy.
That was, I think, your first deck right before Dragon.
It was, yeah. The colorless, we tried a bunch of different ones. The Archeops one worked the best until it was banned. And then,
yeah,
you're right. That was the first love of mine. Was this Archeops colorless deck.
I'm sorry that it had to end that way. We'll talk more about why Archeops had to leave the format coming up here in a bit. But the second one here is, I think, the colorless deck that people love to see is the Porygon Z deck, because it's still powerful. Crazy Code is basically a rain dance effect with special energy from your hand, so you can just attach them to your Pokemon in any way you want. And these Porygon Z decks, they're called Crazy Code colorless decks, are a little bit more back and forth in the fact that they don't just take over in 1 turn, because they have to use and establish their draw engines to find those energy into their hand. So sometimes it's a slower go. Sometimes they're not chaining attackers the same way that the other decks are. But they did have, again, the word of the day, annoying. They're annoying traits. It was playing the slacking that basically ability locked you and then did 160 damage too. So like it had its moments, but I think the Porygon Z decks are still strong. Like if every other colorless deck was banned except the Porygon Z decks, it would still be strong A tier deck and putting up results, and we would all be happy about where the format would be.
That's right. It'd still beat Hitmons.
I actually lost. So in the semifinals of the Asynchronous League, I lost to Jeffrey. Jeffrey was piloting his Porygon Z colorless build, and basically I stomped him game 1 because he started Bidoof, and of course Bidoof dies to Hitmonchan turn 1. And then
Take
games 2
those.
and 3, his only Pokemon in the active spot, basically the entire game, was Lugia. It was just Lugia taking 30 less damage, and he did not bench anything else. So birds having resistance is one of like the biggest boons to fighting in the in Gym Leader Challenge. That everything else is weak to it, but if they just have enough flyers, you just can't do anything, and you still lose. Costello got revenge for me this year. He ended up beating Jeffrey with his Hitmon Bros list. So shout out to him and his Hitmon winning Async League deck. So boop, boop, Hitmon love. It is a deck. It is real. Play it. All right. The last little bit we're going to talk about here before we get into the real colorless decks, or at least the one real one and the other fringe decks, is Bunnelby here, which Bunnelby is a fun card. Bunnelby has the Barrage Delta trait, and the Barrage Delta trait is they get to attack twice. So it's got some fun uses. It's got Burrow, which discards cards from the top of your opponent's deck. And since it gets to attack twice, you get to discard at least 2 cards if you decide to do that, of course, costing 1 colorless energy. The second attack here, which is Rototiller, lets you shuffle any card from your discard pile into your deck. So it's one of the few ways to get back like double colorless energies or those item cards that we talked about being so hard to get back. So Bunnelby's got a lot of kind of like these niche uses that see play in some like control decks. But when you pair Barrage, which can attack twice, with some of the new cards that got printed, it just takes on a whole nother level. Like you can use Bunnelby with Turbo Energize to attach 4 energy from your deck now to your bench. You can use it with Evolution to evolve Pokemon to stage 1s and to stage 2s in a single turn. And of course, if you're playing spread decks, you might consider Blindside, but you might also consider TM Devolution, which can get Pokemon all the way up from their highest evolution all the way down to their basic in the same turn. So Bunnelby's fun, and it has a lot of uses, but it's a 60 HP basic.
Yeah, I think this is actually the most underrated card in Colorless. I play it in my Turbo Snorlax just because being able to TM Energize to 2 attackers turn 1, I probably win. And then shout out to Nolof, who's local to us, but also won a Cardboard Warrior tournament with a Snorlax Turbo / leans more into the control side. And essentially his plan is I'm just going to Snorlax you, but if the wheels fall off the wagon, I'm going to mill 1 card from you and then get back my counter catcher if I'm behind on prizes, and I'll just keep loading up a big guy until you run out of resources and deck out. And by golly, it's his plan D or so, but he also pulls it out all the time and wins with it. And it can just throw you off from in a surprise too, because you probably won't even see the Bunnelby and some of the control elements until it's too late, and then you realize, oh, I shouldn't have Ultra Balled away that Super Rod turn 2. I didn't know this was going to turn into a control matchup. So a lot more to explore on this Bunnelby. The biggest downside is the 2 retreat costs. So you want to play the U-turn board and the Turbo Snorlax build, so I'd say be mindful of that. But try them out. It's a 1-card inclusion that has a lot of power, especially if you are a brewer and you want to look at some of these TMs.
Yeah, Bunnelby, fun card. Play it in Ursaluna, in my Ursaluna deck, and it's pretty fun there too. Again, it's a great control card, but again, it's just got so many uses. Underexplored, like you said. Well, that brings us to the decks. Again, colorless, not the card pool's smaller, but the quality is still there. So we're not going to see the amount of decks that we showed you with Psychic, but we're probably going to show you what people consider to be the best deck in the format currently in the shape of Turbo Colorless. And the whole idea is what we just mentioned with Turbo Energize is you're trying to get an early attacker charged up and powered up and taking KOs early that your opponent can't deal with. And then you're using your powerful draw engine of Barrel, Oranguru, and Squovit to just churn through your deck to find all these super greedy cards. Like, let's be honest, these are some pretty greedy cards that are just good techs against the format. Like, I'm talking cards like Rhyme, which is half an escape rope. Your opponent switches out their Pokemon to the bench and you draw 3. Cards like they're running 6 tools. Like, that is not a key piece of consistency for most decks. Reset Stamp. Some of them are playing Red Card. Like, you're playing Battle VIP Pass and Compressor. Like, you're playing all these cards that are really niche in their usage. But it just works because you don't need your supporters to be drawing your cards when you can see so many cards per turn.
And you can't really hand disrupt them because then they just have that engine to draw right back into it. I think another reason for Reset Stamp to note is there's not an Iono or an N. There's either one or the other, if I remember correctly. And it's because your supporter for turn in the mid to late game, you probably do need a Raihan or Mela. So I'd say the weak part of the deck is being able to make sure that you can keep your attacker streamlined, but it's barely a weak part. Essentially, Archeops rotated, and Phoenix Fire, who's one of the best deck builders in the entire game, just said, I don't think that matters. And he was so right. This deck is actually even better than Archeops. I think if Lab didn't get banned, this would still be a better deck.
I think Turbo Energize getting printed helped out a ton. I
Yeah.
think Archeops might still have something to say, but I'm with you. Now, there are ways to tech for Turbo Colorless that we'll talk about coming up. Like, I don't think that it's as busted as Archeops was in the early game. Like, Archeops used to just throw down the stadium that evolved. Pokemon Research Lab is the name of the stadium. And just by turn 2, they were charging up every single attacker in their deck and taking KOs. I don't think that this deck is as good at that. Like, you don't feel like you get donked the same way that an Archeops does, but it's got the feel bads.
So you have one extra turn for when they turbo energize.
100%. You have that extra turn, and if you're playing this deck, you never have the feel bads, is what I feel. Every time I've seen someone pilot this deck, they've just drawn so many cards, and they look like they're having fun.
And if you're new to GLC and you like to Mew VMAX, this feels great. You essentially have Genesect, but you also have a way to reset your hand from it. So if you are new to GLC, you're listening to this podcast, and you miss Mew VMAX, it never rotated in GLC. It's one of the best decks in format. Your Mew is just a Snorlax.
All right. Well, here's a kind of control deck, and Colorless has a lot of control options built into it just because of the nature of some of its cards. It's got some tankier, bigger Pokemon with some weird abilities. So this is a deck that's featured around Ursaluna, who has the what's it called? Pete Hunt ability, which lets you get back any 2 cards from your discard pile to your hand. So the idea is you use Pete Hunt to grab like a card to heal Ursaluna, and another card to maybe power it up. You're playing triple acceleration energy. And then you alternate basically Pete Hunt to heal, and then it's bulky bump attack, which is 200 to take KOs. So you basically set up a loop where your Ursaluna can't be KO'd, and it can be continuously healed, and it just takes a prize every other turn to eventually win the game, which is not typically the win con for a lot of control decks. It's normally like the stall plan or the mill plan. So the fun thing about this is you get to see yourself die.
That's right.
Besides that, it's playing the Bunnelby, because the Bunnelby is another way to get back resources in case your Ursaluna does get KO'd. You're playing cards to make your hand large. So one of the reasons why you won't see this deck particularly play that engine we just talked about, Oranguru, Squovit, and Bibarel, is because you don't want small hands to see more cards. You want large hands because you need to have like one kind of explosive turn where you're playing Lieutenant Surge into 2 other supporters to do kind of these incredible things that set up this in-game loop that's just going to win you the game. So again, more cards in hand is better, which is why you're playing Airmail, which is why you're playing Cinccino, which is why you're playing Gormandized Snorlax, which lets you shuffle up to 7, but your turn ends. So that's this deck. It's fun. I don't know if it's the best control deck in Colorless at the moment, but it's the one that wins the game.
I honestly think it is. I'll say Ursaluna Control made day 2 of EUIC, so if it's good enough to win in Standard where they're doing 1,000 damage, pretty good in GLC.
Okay. Yeah, did not know it. It took some dubs in Standard, so good to know that as well. I'm trying to pilot it right now. Like, I probably have like 10 to 20 reps with the decks, and I'm still just like, I don't know what I'm doing with it. Like, so it takes a while to get used to it. I keep getting bodied by other people who know how to play against it. Well, I think the last real list, again, real is air quotes here, is Crazy Code, which is that Porygon Z deck. Porygon Z is a Rain Dancer, attaches special energy from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you'd like. You're playing Kangaskhan and Lugia as key attackers. You've got Airmail and Cinccino, again, because you want to build big hands, because you're always going to be searching for energy in these builds. And then, of course, you've got Slacking here, who has the Ability Lock trait, but it also does 160 damage. So you are cutting off your opponent's abilities, and you're taking KOs with it simultaneously. It's a stage 2, but in these builds, you're trying to build those hands, so getting to it shouldn't be too difficult. Snorlax Obviously, great basic attacker that you're going to play in every colorless deck that's trying to be competitive. And then in this build, we went with Donk Tauros, which is one of my favorite cards.
Ah,
Basically, DCE takedown does 80 damage, so you can just hit something on the first or second turn pretty easily with the Tauros if you happen to find a DCE. And then its Raging Bull attack does 20 plus, I think, 20 more for each damage counter on it. So it's a fun card, but if you're looking to get those early wins, maybe cheese out a victory here and there, recommend the Single Strike Tauros to you there.
definitely. That card has gotten a lot more popular around us in just the last couple of months. It's sort of spread like wildfire. Enough people got donked by it that now other people are considering using it and using it.
These crazy code builds were actually the first colorless builds that decided to go in on the fire engine, and this was kind of before Turbo Energizer was a thing. So they were playing Giant Hearth just because finding that energy was so important. And I think that today, this is an older list, but I think that maybe they would even consider playing something like Mela. I think I've even seen lists in the past playing not Magma Basin because you can't do it, but like ways to get fire energy back from their discard pile. So maybe like Clara or something like that. Like it's ridiculous sometimes what these lists try to do to maximize the fire aspect of the colorless builds. All right, other decks that you might see are spread builds that are trying out Spinda, which is a pretty good spread attacker. It does 10 to everything for 1 energy, and it confuses the active, which has actually been a big deal. Like stopping
Yeah.
opponents from doing any damage to you and putting more damage on the board has been huge. And then Iron Jugulus is the other new addition. I think it's 3 energy. You can do 50 to a Pokemon that's already been damaged, up to 3 of them. So
Yeah, it's a 3 Pokemon.
yep. So pretty good there. The spread builds still kind of find themselves being Snorlax. Like it's just like, hey, yeah, we have this great spread plan. We're gonna spread damage and do all this fun stuff. Look at us go. Oh yeah, you got rid of that? Okay, Snorlax.
We still have the lax.
Then Kecleon builds, which are super fun. Kecleon basically says if there's an energy attached to it, it's that type. So you can deal weakness. So it's a type or a build that's kind of based all around doing weakness, which is a super effective, again, pun intended, super effective way to deal with opponent's Pokemon. I think it does 90 for 3 energy, and then it gains that type. So those Kecleon builds are pretty fun. And I think there's another card in that build. It's the Painter Pokemon. What's the Painter Pokemon?
Yeah, Smeargle.
Smeargle.
You have
So
Ho-Ho.
yeah, the Smeargle
And then
does.
there's also a Rayquaza.
Oh yeah, the Rayquaza is sweet, but the Smeargle does like it's 2 energies DCE cost, but I think it does X more damage for each basic energy you reveal. So you're playing cards like Lady in that deck to go and get just all these different basic energy reveal, like Dark, Grass, Fire, and like Lightning to your opponent, and be like, I got them all, buddy. So
It's one of the decks that lets you play a Fairy energy too.
Oh yeah,
it's probably better than Fairy still.
It's a fun build. The decks have kind of taken on the name Bob Ross because of the painting aspect of it. It's a fun build. If you're looking to have a lot of fun in Gym Leader Challenge, check out the Kecleon painting builds. And kind of the last little piece here are there some fossil builds, like Archeops is still around. Aerodactyl is still a thing. I think there are some other fossil mons that see play, but fossil's fallen off hard.
It's interesting. We actually just messed with this 2 weeks ago. And the hardest thing isn't necessarily the setting up the Archeops. That is obviously harder. But you have things like Airmail and Caitlyn, and then you have certain fossils that can special summon it from the bottom of your deck to the bench. However, it's not really worth having these high energy attackers. For the most part, you really just want Snorlax, who, how do you want to power them up? With Raihan, Mela, Turbo Energize, and things like that. So what we found in our testing is this is maybe a card to keep in mind, and an engine to keep in mind, I should say, for once some higher energy cost attackers come out, maybe later in the years to come.
Yeah, I feel like our recent fossil builds just don't compete with any of the current meta. There's a power creep, and it was great a year ago, and it's not great anymore.
I blame Snorlax.
Yep.
Well, how do you beat colorless? So again, we're looking at this powerful draw engine. We're looking at these beefy attackers. We're looking at just special energy that have the same effects as supporter, but they're also charging up attacks. Like Jet Energy is Tate and Liza, like the second mode on Tate and Liza, plus it's powering up your Snorlax, right? Like all these special energy that are so good. Then you've got double colorless energies. They have at least three of them that see consistent play. You've got colorless, twin energy, and turbo energy that all see play in most of the colorless decks, which is basically Raihan. Because how many times have I Raihan, attach an energy, go and find an energy from the deck? Like it's just one energy that does that. So how do you go about beating colorless builds when they can power up their attackers quicker than you? They can see cards in their deck quicker than you. And then once you've kind of mitigated what they're trying to do, once you've established your board, they can still just catch up because their energy is their accelerant. It counts as two. What do you do?
What's your favorite stadium?
Lost City. You Lost City, the Snorlax.
Well, Lost
And it
City
honestly
Snorlax
makes a
is
difference.
busted.
It does. Yeah, that's how I won our last game against Colorless, is I Lost City, the Snorlax as soon as I possibly could.
As it turns out, the other attackers have the same energy requirement and are just okay. Snorlax is really great, and then something like a Cyclizar is suitable, but it's not a broken card. We haven't even mentioned it this entire podcast, which should say something. And then
Yes.
my strategy has been to build decks that actually counter the fact that if you look at all the attackers for colorless, they're all basic attackers. So I look at something like, well, I won't give a spoiler to what we're going to talk about later, but in a water build, for example, you could tech in an I skew, which can only be hit by basics. So if you don't overbench, they can never take all 6 prizes, for example, unless they have something like the what does Squavid evolve into? Greedent, which not many lists have. I think that card's great. Beish, I think, yep, you're giving me the thumbs down. You do not. But, so that just goes to say, not many of them will have these non-basic attackers. So you feel pretty good when Turbo Colorless's best line is the Tail Smash with a Bibarel. So that's something to consider is, and this is just true for wherever we're at in a meta, you can try to look at, okay, what is a commonality between these deck lists? If Turbo Colorless is the best thing and they're all doing the same thing, what's a weakness to that? Oh, they're all basics? There's actually a lot of things in the format that prevent basic hate. But you have to be careful too, because some of them are on abilities. So there's a Pyroar and Fire that can't be hit by basics, but guess what? Phoenix Fire plays Hexmaniac. So you can't do something like that. You need the effect on the attack. They're not going to be playing something like a Pokemon Ranger that would clear that. I'm not even sure if that's how that works.
Didn't even know that was a card.
Maybe I'm just pulling that out of nowhere. But yeah, that to me is the big weakness, is the fact that they're all basic attackers.
Yeah. And that's definitely a way to go about attacking colorless. Again, we're going to talk about our deck of the week this week is a deck that definitely targets not only colorless, but it targets psychic. We'll talk about that here shortly. But I think another way is, they have to find their energy. And without Archeops anymore, finding that energy has gotten a little bit more difficult. Obviously, Mela, Raihan, Turbo Energize all really help with getting energy out of the deck or out of the discard pile. But finding that energy to hand at times can be difficult. So going after their energy can be a winning line, but also sometimes you can get like hyper focus on that and just lose to the beatdown plan that they have. So like cards like Enhanced Hammer, which is an item card that gets discards a special energy, might be a card that's useful for your deck in this particular matchup. Hard part about Enhanced Hammer is you have to find it. If your deck isn't a deck that's built to go and get item cards, or not built to go get a supporter that can get you item cards, like fighting, or trying to think of another type that doesn't draw super well, maybe Dragon, for example, although Dragon does have fast call to get those things. Enhanced Hammer might be a card that's hard for you to play. Like Dark is another example. Like Dark is just not going to be able to find Enhanced Hammer very easily. Faba is another supporter that does similar things. It discards it puts in the Lost Zone, special energy. It's Tool or Stadium. So it's a card that has uses outside of just the special energy. But even then, like you're playing that supporter, you're not drawing other cards, you're not setting up your board with your supporter. So is Faba worth it in the long run? And even like there was a card that was printed. It takes away like maybe one of each of your opponent's colorless energies.
Giacomo.
Yeah, Giacomo or whatever it was. Like everyone was like, "That's the answer. That's the answer." No, it never was. It never was the answer.
That was bait. And at the end of the day, you're not going to play colorless all the time, so you don't really want to play with like a 58, 59 card deck either. So yeah, keep your Giacomos in your bulk for now, I think.
But play your bench barriers. That is a key 50. A key card to play in your 59 card deck. You can't play fighting to beat colorless. This is just an FYI. Because of the flyers, because they're going to see so many more cards than you, the fact that many of the colorless Pokemon have weakness to fighting, and that fighting is one of those types that can't find cards when it needs to outside of attackers, is really beneficial for it. Like, imagine a fighting deck that was consistent. Like, all of a sudden, colorless kind of gets taken down a notch, and we're good. But we don't have that, and so colorless can kind of just police the format to a certain degree because of the fact that fighting is not as powerful as we'd hoped.
It's because you have to get on the cloth technology for fighting.
I wish.
That's for another day.
All right, deck of the week. So we have a super sweet build, and Zach, I took your build off of this one. I know that my build is technically better, at least in name.
I mean, yours is better than Z-Man by the title, even.
Yeah. In name, my deck is better. So after Z-Man streamed his version of the deck, of course, I had to stream my version, and I named my list better than Z-Man's list. So here is a cool list, a list that I had zero confidence in. Like, I had kind of toyed around with these cards when they got printed in 151. Again, I'm a Gen 1er to a certain degree. I actually prefer Gen 2, but we just lump ourselves in with the Gen 1ers.
Same time frame. It's okay.
Yeah. We were young. We didn't know any better. All right. Meganium was a thing. But
Meganium is based.
If only there was a good printing. But we've got this list right here is all about the Nidokings and Queens of the format. So talk us through it, Zach. This is your list. This is your baby. You put a lot of work into it. Tell us about it.
I wish I could say it's because I'm like a metagame expert, but really just at nighttime, if I can't go to sleep, I think, let me try to make a bad deck. And so we were talking before the podcast. I used to be a songwriter and I would make songs. Now I get stuck in Pokemon cards in my brain. And 151 set came out and I thought, let me look at this Nidoking. It seems really good. And then we played on our stream against dragons because that's your favorite deck. And I realized this Nidoqueen has this attack where, oh, it can't be attacked by basics. Wow, this is pretty good. And then you got frustrated. You're like, did you tell me to play dragons just because you know it auto wins? Are you trying to set up the matchups? Like,
I'm pretty sure you did.
No, I was just trying to have a stream. And it's true. The only answer is to power up a Dragonite, which is not ideal, or try to get your Garchomp to take it out. And yours was prized, and that happens.
Frequently.
You have a 10% chance of prizing any card. And so if you have a stage 2, you do that by 3, someone smarter than me can do the odds. Prizing a piece of a stage 2 line, pretty common. So this deck, I realized I started to refine it a little bit more. You take aspects from Turbo, such as the Hoopa and the Spiritomb, so you can get those early prizes. And that's why there's a couple key pieces that you might not see in other dark decks. So notably, there's a Rescue Carrier in here. Because not only can you get rid of some of the things that you discarded, like the Nido lines and things like that, but you can get back like a Spiritomb and try to take a little guy. There's things to slow down some of the other decks that you need to. So Wobbuffet is good in Psychic. In Dark, you play the Galarian Wheezing, so you can kind of build up your board behind, because we are playing 2 stage 2s and a couple evolution lines. I think it's 5 evolution lines, which if you told me that on paper, I'd say that's crazy. But when you think about the deck, and let's say maybe you come from a standard background, how many times did people say Duraludon was a terrible deck? And then how many regionals did it win? 3? 4?
Yeah.
How many times do people sleep on Alolan Vulpix? Well, it just got second at the last Champions League. It won EUIC. So it's the same thing. It just prevents the main deck of a format from being able to do its thing. So in the same way that Duraludon had a good matchup into Arceus, or Vulpix has a good matchup into Charizard now, or Gardevoir in the format before, this has a good matchup into the 2 best decks. So if you're playing against Colorless, you set up the Nidoqueen, they're going to be really hurting. You also have 170 HP, so if they are trying to tail smash you, they're going to have to flip heads twice. If you're playing against Dark, you hit for weakness, and despite what we said about the matchup for that, it actually is pretty good, especially because you can hide behind the Galarian Wheezing in this build, which is helpful. If you have the Galarian Wheezing on board, you get some Hoopa or Spiritomb hits in there, and then you have a couple of things that you happen to take favorable matchups to that are nice. Lightning plays mostly basic attackers, so you have a great Lightning matchup. They almost always hit you with Blitzel. Dragon, sorry dear. Funny enough, your worst matchup is fighting, and you know what? That deck bricks, so it's okay. Uh, and you have to have a bad matchup somewhere. So this deck is something really cool. I definitely recommend checking it out. One important ruling note is for Zoroark to make sure you're doing it right. If you have a Nido that's knocked out, you need to evolve it that turn, and then you cannot evolve it that turn. So you have to think ahead a little bit there. And also in terms of your benching, you can never overbench because a lot of times the Nidoqueen will be the very last card on your board, so they can't boss around it. Which means if you want to get value out of your Nidoking, that thing is probably going to hit before you attack with the Nidoqueen. So you don't really have to go right into the Nidoqueen. You can recover it. You have Rescue Carrier and your typical recovery cards. You have the Zoroark line, which is insane. That's the whole reason I built the deck in the beginning when I was just kind of memeing around. So you can go in with the Nidoking, who's no slouch. He does 190 in poisons, so effectively does 200. So it can take out a lot of big things. It's a really fun deck, honestly. I think I would say this is slept on, but for locally for us, it's not anymore. I got my first Stark badge with it, and then actually one of our other players, Caleb, tried getting his Dark badge 4 weeks in a row. He was using his versions of I'd say like Turbo Dark essentially, and just he's getting really close. It's a great deck, but would go 2-1 consistently, and then with this got the 3-0. You know, you hit 2 colorlesses and a psychic, which is what you're gonna see at a lot of places, but it's just a comfortable win for a lot of those if all of the game plans go to action. So yeah, check out. It has a couple names: Stygian Kingdom, Niduo, Nidoking, Nidoqueen. And I think the secret's out a little bit on Nidoqueen, but a lot of people will get distracted from the Nidoking. They think it's a Nidoking deck. I thought it was too when I was building it as a fun deck, but the Nidoqueen's the real star, and it's just a game winner. It's our Arc Vulpix, Alolan Vulpix, or our Duraludon of our format right now.
Again, I was a non-believer when we went this route. I like picked up the deck. I saw you doing well with it. Pellet was talking a ton about this deck.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see it. I was like, I don't know if this deck is going to be any good at all. Put it together, played it on stream, learned the Zoroark ruling on stream. I thought it worked like Ninja Boy or Thornton, where you could immediately evolve. No, you cannot do that.
I wish it did.
It would be so good if it did. It's still good, but it would be so good if you could just immediately evolve into your Nidoqueen that turn and get to attacking. But it really impressed me in the fact that it does have good matchups into a lot of things in the format. Fire has been a little bit more based on basic attackers recently. Lightning, like you mentioned, that was our matchup on Strain. Like the fact that Lightning can't do damage to your Nidoqueen if it's in the active, and then the fact that it has to discard energy sometimes with its Regieleki is just backbreaking. Like it's just so good into so many different decks in the format. It does take a little getting used to play. Like I definitely played some reps before I got on stream. You have to kind of know when to get aggressive, when not to get aggressive. Again, like we mentioned very early on, the better pilot you are, the better results you're going to get. And it doesn't matter what deck you're playing, but put in the reps, get the work done, know what cards are in your deck, and know how the rules work, which is sometimes my toughest bit there.
I'd say my final thing, because there's a couple different options. I'll say respectfully, don't play the Dream Ball stuff. You do need some kind of free retreater. You need most of the attackers that are in here, but the free retreater, I saw you had the Yveltal. I think that's cool. You could do that, or the more Pico. And Luxurious Cape is also a staple, because you need that Nidoqueen to survive a couple hits. But you save it. You hope their field blowers down, or if they use it on Luxurious Cape, so be it. But I think that's a staple of the deck as well.
Yeah, free retreater was really important. I like the Yveltal. The Yveltal for 1 energy discards a special energy from your opponent's Pokemon and does 30, which doesn't work on Snorlax, so it's not Snorlax tech. There is just a lot of special energy running around the format, mostly like thinking Wailord, Bensa Titan, special energy water builds, but there are others beyond that. And I think the second attack does 60 for 2 energy, then your opponent can't retreat. So it's got some of its good uses. It's 110 basic with free retreat too, so I really like it for that fact. The more Pico, I like, but I'm like never really using it. Like I'm never really attacking with it, which has been my issue. So Yveltal, I just feel like for me was a better pick, which is why I thought that my deck list was better than yours.
I think you cut the Rescue Carrier though, which is a grave mistake. I need the Rescue Carrier.
I might have or I might not have, but if I did, I stand by it now.
You got to put it in there. And then I noticed this is a little bit older too, so you might put Buddy Poffin in there. I don't know. There's some room to play, but just some of those cards, parallel, you can't cut that either. There's a couple of key cards, so maybe play it with this version to understand the deck a little bit, just so you can kind of get the lockdown and then mess with it. It's not to say it's a perfect 60. This is a casual format, so there's never a perfect 60 in my opinion. But I would play with it with this, try to get an understanding of it, and then change some stuff around.
Yeah, 100%. That's the best part of the format is the tweaking. Like you don't have to be a deck
Yeah.
builder to take something and make it your own.
Please do tweak. That's the best part of the format.
Well, all right. Leads
Oh,
us to our last minute here. We've already been talking for like 2 hours, so this is going to be a long podcast, some long edits. But you know what? It's fine. I'm happy about
You're welcome.
it. Well, all right. Because Psychic and Colorless are considered to be some of the better types, we have to talk about bannings, right? It's just what happens. You've got the best decks. People are up in wars. I hate this card because of this. I hate that card because of this. This card isn't fun. Let's make the format balanced. Everyone wants to get their 2 cents in on what needs to be banned. Well, GLC only has like 6 cards banned. Hiker, Lysander's Trump card, Force of Giant Plants. There's an Owen Guru. There's the amazing rare Kyogre, and then there's Chipax are the bannings. And then the latest addition to the ban list was the Pokemon Research Lab, which is one of the reasons why Archeops is no longer playable. It's just become a lot more difficult to get it out when you can't just put a stage 1 onto your bench on the first turn of the game. Well, 4 of these cards are kind of from Colorless builds. Like Colorless has gotten a couple of these cards banned. And so I got up here one of the original Colorless builds from Grant, who put in some work early on in the format. This is not the oldest list I could find. It's got one big not inclusion, I should say. The Bunnelby should be the Oranguru, because the Oranguru just got 3 cards back from your discard pile and put them on the bottom of your deck. And then you're playing some weird cards here. Like one of them says, like, hey, draw a card from the top of your deck or the bottom of your deck. So when you're looking at a card like that being included, you're like, oh, it synergizes really well. But like these decks were bonkers back in the day. Like they just couldn't be stopped. Your opponent didn't get to play the game. They were just managing resources like crazy because they were discarding things, but then putting them back into your deck. And then they just stalled you out and won. And Colorless got those cards banned. Like, and obviously there were other reasons why they didn't generate fun game plan. But Colorless has a history of getting cards banned. So that leads us to ban discussion. All right, there are 3 cards, and I'm going to say 3-ish cards that people are all in uproars about currently that they would like to see gone from the format. One of them is Snorlax, which we talked about being potentially one of the better attackers in the format. The other one is Marshadow with its Let Loose ability, which makes you and your opponent both shuffle your hands into your deck and draw 4. And then there's double Colorless Energy, and all of them have a case to be banned. All of them have a case to stay legal. What are thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say, which one do you lobby to get banned the most? Do you think, Jeff?
So my biggest concern, I would love for Gym Leader Challenge to be balanced. So let me start there. I know it's impossible. You can't do it until you are creating cards for the format, and no one has that ability. Pokemon hasn't recognized Gym Leader Challenge as an official format yet, so cards aren't being printed specifically for Gym Leader Challenge, and that makes it more difficult when cards aren't coming into your format to help it stay balanced, to keep it balanced. So let's just agree right now, there's no way for us to keep Gym Leader balanced or to make it balanced in any way. Double Colorless Energy is stupid. Like it's just like the fact that there's an energy that gives 2 energy and there's multiple copies of them, and there's really only 1, 2, maybe 3 decks that can take full advantage of playing multiple copies. All of them are colorless decks, and then outside of that there's maybe like Guzzlord, and people have their issues with Guzzlord too. Like people sometimes think Guzzlord is an oppressive deck. So if I was going to hit a card in the format, I would limit double colorless energy. Like that's what I think would solve a lot of these issues. Like Snorlax would still be a great attacker, but if Snorlax took 3 attachments, we'd all be much happier, right? If it wasn't stomping you on turn 3. we would, or on turn 2, if it was turn 3 instead of turn 2, we would all be in a much happier place. So advocating for, if I was going to ban something right now, I think the format's kind of okay, to be honest, or at least most of the people that I
Yeah.
play with don't play Colorless because we don't like to be that people. So I would advocate for a double Colorless limit. Like you can either play DCE or Twin Energy, but maybe you can't have both in your deck.
I think that makes sense because I think Snorlax will get power crept again in a year or two. And it's just like that sign of, okay, we have single pricers trying to keep up with V's, EXs, whatever the future holds. And then for a singleton format, there's arguments to be made of it's nice to have 2 of cards. And that's true for things like Cypher Maniacs versus Mallow. One's a future card, and that card's also just kind of, it's really good. But something like the double colorless, just I am actually okay with there being 2 of them, to be honest. And I want to ban the Marshadow, but I'll say I would ban, or I would limit to 1 the double colorless before I'd ever touch a card like Snorlax. I don't think Snorlax itself is utterly bannable because then it sets a precedent that will be bad for power creep in the future. Whereas the engine that enables it, I've even heard talks about banning like Squavit, for example, but I don't really agree with all that.
Ridiculous.
I can see where they're coming from, but I don't think it's correct. I think the ban list only being 6 cards or whatever it is pretty nice. And I think, yeah, to go into singleton format, having this to 1 makes more sense than Snorlax. However, the real answer is ban Marshadow. That card is trash. It is not fun. If you want to scare a new player away, you play Psychic with them. You say, oh, you're going first or second. They say, what should I do? And then you tell them, you should go second. You really want to make sure you play your supporters for turn. They're like, great, I have this fun grass deck. I can't wait. You're like, all right, little Timmy. Well, oh, I found my level ball. Oh, my Marshadow's not priced. Here you go, Timmy. You started only 1 basic Pokemon? What a fool. You should have done something a little bit different. Now your hand is 4 cards. And then little Timmy says, I don't have anything I can play. And you say, well, you're going to lose because next turn I'll evolve my Ralts into my Curlia because before I Marshadowed myself, I played my hand down to 2. I played my Fog Crystal. I played my Quick Ball. Maybe I had a Mew in the active. So I'm sorry, buddy, but I don't even need a Wobbuffet you this turn. And I hope you enjoyed this format. Thanks for playing. Isn't this a great format? I'm really tired of Vs and EXs. So that's the thing. You make someone not playing the game before. And it's just really interesting because there's this discourse of, oh, well, you don't want to break yourself. Marshadow is actually better in the mid game. No, I'm sorry. That's not true because I'm never scared of Marshadow once I'm already set up. But it's a matter of, okay, if I'm the Psychic player and I'm setting up, and then, like I said, I play down my hand to 2 and then a Marshadow, it's awesome. I'm probably going to do it. I'm going to cheese out a win. I feel terrible. I'm sorry, but I'm going to win the game. And then there's the other time, too, where it's just like, okay, I do want to get a Ralts here, but my hand is terrible. And little Timmy is grinning. You know, like he does not have a good poker face. We're not playing online. We're playing in person. I can read this guy like a book. Executive. I can tell what your face is saying. And then boom, I'm gonna Marshadow you because you have no poker face, little Timmy. So to me, it's just a matter of being able to make someone not play the game just from the very beginning. Makes it unfun. And for me, Gym Leader Challenge is the most fun way to play Pokemon cards. I think that's the way Tricky Jim says it. He's a little biased because it's his format, but I agree with him. It's the most fun way to play. But Marshadow is the least fun card in the game.
Yeah, I agree that Marshadow is the one of the 3 there that should be banned. Although I do agree that the Twin Energy, Double Colorless Energy, it should be limited to 1. But I don't know. In Yu-Gi-Oh, they had Delinquent Duo. That card got banned. It's been banned since then. It's pretty much the same thing as Marshadow, is knock your opponent's hand down to a little bit more than half of what it was first turn of the game, and you're probably gonna win now. Congratulations.
Yeah, Marshadow's tough because I like to play Marshadow in my Psychic decks. Let's be honest. I like to play Marshadow.
You'd be a fool not to.
Yeah,
I don't like people to play Marshadow against me. It's objectively toxic. Like it is not a good card. It's not balanced. And Pokemon Search is so good that you are likely to always have it on turn 1. Now, whether or not it's the right decision to play it on turn 1 is a little bit less clear, but like 9 times out of 10, like when I'm playing against a Psychic Lost Zone player and they're an item-based deck and they can just keep filling up their hands with playing multiple cards per turn, they're going to Marshadow me on turn 1, especially if they're going first. And if they're going second, they're probably doing it regardless too. So Marshadow, it creates non-games, but is Marshadow any different than like getting donked. Like instead of your Pokemon getting donked, your hand just got donked, right? Like that's kind of how I feel a little bit about Marshadow. Like you didn't get to play the
Glad you
game,
mentioned that.
but the game went on longer than you had hoped. So like maybe it just feels worse than a donk because the game isn't immediately over after you've been Marshadowed.
For a donk, if I'm getting donk consistently, I'm realizing I have a deck building error. I don't have enough ball search, because you can't attack the first turn. So if I am not drawing enough outs to basics in my deck, that's on me. I need to change my deck. Mark Shadow on turn one, that's not on me. If I only drew one basic and I can't play down my hand because I didn't have my turn yet, uh, that's just toxic.
It's the difference between 4 cards and 7 cards. Like, as Zach was saying, 7, that helps you. No, it's your fault. But 4 cards, that's a huge difference in the percentages of being able to get those outs.
Well, it is 100%. It's a difference of percentages, but like, should you not then be focused on playing and building your deck to draw you out of a Marshadow out? Should you not be playing more draw supporters? Should you not be playing more ways to search out basics if you're expecting Marshadow to be a big player in the format? It's the same way as playing more Pokemon down on your bench if you're expecting to get donked. So I don't know. I'm not sold on the Marshadow. Again, I agree that it's a toxic card. It's not a fun card. And as someone who has lost to it playing fighting going turn one numerous times, like I hate that card actively. And I think the format would be better without it. Go ahead.
I've won tons of times when someone has Marshadowed me turn one because I can kind of play out of it, and I've seen people brick themselves with it. The biggest thing that I have missed is I know 4 people that have quit the format because they just started playing and they got Marshadowed early. Like, I was being a little facetious with my little Timmy thing, but I really do know people that just do not play Gym Leader Challenge because Marshadow's in the format.
Yeah. No, when we talked about this, there are issues with Gym Leader Challenge, right? There are people that don't play Gym Leader Challenge because Eevee isn't a playable card either. So
That's a fair point. Yeah, you do need Eevee.
yeah. Would I be mad at a Marshadow banning? No, that wouldn't be. And I think that it would be a big plus for the format if it did. Do I think that its power level is necessarily enough for a banning? I'm not sure on that. So I'm willing to debate that a little bit more. But again, is it toxic gameplay? Yes, 100%. I think that the colorless debate, like what you mentioned about future proofing, I am fine with Snorlax staying in the format. We'll find ways to do 180 damage to it, 150, whatever it needs to get done. We'll find ways to do that. I can't stand double colorless energies having multiple printings and only basically benefiting colorless and a few other decks. So I would love for that to be limited, or I would love for every deck to have their own double colorless energy. If Pokemon printed cards tomorrow that were like, here's double dark, here's double fire, like every type had a double type card, I think we would be complaining less about double colorless energy, and we all be like, sweet, we can do it. And you know what? That might be the answer. Double dragon exists, right? It's
there
only
you go.
a matter of time until we get double fighting.
There you go.
I think a parallel could be drawn to like Lysander and Boss. Like, you can only play one of those. Those are different names though, so
yeah,
you can make a similar argument for double colorless and twin.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard rule to write, and that's kind of one of the things that came up in a lot of the discussions on the online discourse was like, hey, like all of a sudden, are we talking about functional reprints? What is a functional reprint? Is it cards that do the exact same thing? Does having a different like identifier qualify it as a different card? Like, for example, we mentioned Target Whistle and the Echoing Horn. They both effectively do the same thing in the Gym Leader Challenge format. One of them just happens to have the Rapid Strike tag on it, which makes it interact differently with certain cards. Like, it can get searched from your deck in different ways. There might be a Pokemon that does more damage based on the amount of Rapid Strike cards you have in the discard pile. I'm not saying that exists. Does that make that a different card?
I think so, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
What we're really seeing here is the lack of expanded support from Pokemon. So if they don't recognize Gym Leader Challenge as a official format, which I think they're throwing for doing that, I want all of our kids to be playing in GLC regionals in 10 years or so. But if they could just recognize expanded and it makes them the rulings like they did for research and boss's orders, that wouldn't put the onus of it on Tricky Gym or the powers to be to do all these individualized rulings.
It is what it is for now. But again, always fun to talk bans because we don't have any power. I don't have to make the decision. I'm not making any.
And because Marshadow should be banned.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't be
Hashtag ban
sad to see that.
Marshadow. I'm starting this campaign tomorrow.
This is gonna get edited out of the final clip of the podcast. It's just gonna be well.
One of my friends wasn't sold until he got decked out with a Marshadow because he only had 3 cards in his hand and like 1 card in his deck, and he got decked out by Marshadow. Now he's a believer. I'll say if that happens to you, that's on your fault. But the turn 1 Marshadow, it's not your fault, okay, Timmy? It's not your fault.
What if we just made a rule, like a blanket rule, like no one gets to play Marshadow on turn 1? Just change the let loose ability. Like you can have Marshadow in your deck, you just can't do it on turn 1. That way we can keep
Oh,
the
that'd be
name for the
fine.
podcast.
Yeah, I think that would completely change the discussion.
Yeah, and the same way too. Our Discord icon is Let Loose and Marshadow because it's a hot topic. We're in Maryland, and at first I made the thing Ball Guy because it's like, oh, I guess that's the icon of GLC. But I realized for us and for our community, it's Marshadow. This is the most talked about thing in the Maryland GLC community. Ban Marshadow.
Speaking
We've
on
lost too
Ball
many
Guy,
good people.
hot take on Ball Guy. That card
He's
is
terrible.
one of the biggest time wasters in this format. Like if you ever want to see a
That's
turn go from taking 30 seconds to 10 minutes, play a Ball Guy, search for your balls. Well,
True.
check your prizes first to make sure that your balls are there. Then
Mhm.
play your balls to search for your Pokemon. Well, you got to discard some from your hand, and then you got to check your prizes again because you've already forgotten. And now 10 minutes later, we're on turn 2,
Yep.
and we did it. So.
Yeah. PSA, people, when you're putting your balls to the front of your deck, put the Pokemon you're going to get to. Also, Ball Guy is a card that has been getting cut the most from us lately. Honestly, that card has really fallen off a lot.
Arvin Buddy Poffin makes it an easier cut these days.
Yeah.
Well, we're nearing the end, so we've got some shout outs here. I'm going to let you start with this first one. Baltimore PokeCon's coming up. What's up with that?
Yeah, we have our third PokeCon. Happy to be on the staff helping with this. For those of you that have been there before, you probably competed in the badges, and if you did the best with your type, then you got a badge for that type. So Bohemian, for example, the Lightning Master around here got a really sick Lightning badge. We're gonna do it in an even cooler way this year. So Saturday will be the same kind of system where it's a typical tournament and you get a badge based on your type. We're looking at doing something fun on Sunday. Without giving away too much, it looks like it'll be based on who can master the most amount of types, which I think is something that speaks to Cardboard Warriors. We have the dates in there. I believe it's June 29th. Is that what it says on there? And 30th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So I know a couple people have actually messaged us about flying out to there. I'll say Laurel's a great part of Baltimore. You can fly into DC or BWI. It really goes to show the passion level of CBW and GLC enjoyers. But Maryland is a great way to do it because if you come in on Thursday, you can hit a local in DC, and then you can hit on Friday a local in Frederick, and then play on this Saturday and Sunday. So if you come in a little bit early, stay on Tuesday, hit us in Baltimore at Game Haven. It's a great way to play Gym Leader Challenge for sure. There's also going to be VGC. There's going to be cosplay. We love the vendors. I think we always lose a couple $100 when we're there from the plushies and the stickers that are all around our house. So it's going to be a great time if you're just a fan of Pokemon in general. So the tickets just went live last week, and yeah, check it out.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a good time. Jealous of all of that. Wish I could make it too. Unfortunately, weekend times are Ollie and Dad time, so not a lot of childcare on this side of South Carolina, especially since my parents now live out. But maybe one day. My goal is one day to drive up there, maybe the gorgeous Akron, Ohio, too, to maybe play in some FFG events.
That's right.
So we'll see. We'll make the Northeast trek at some point.
I've noticed a lot of us GLC players are also parents. The key is we just have to get all of our kids into GLC as well, so that way we're taking the kids up to Maryland or Akron, Ohio.
Or maybe we just need to put like a daycare attached to every venue.
New business idea.
Oh, all right. Another shout out here. Cardboard Warriors has what's effectively the biggest online tournament. So if you're in the webcam Gym Leader Challenge tournaments coming up on April 28th, which is very soon. I think that's this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. There's going to be a tournament. It's on Sunday. It's going to start at 12 o'clock Central Time, which is 1 o'clock Eastern Time for those of you on the East Coast like me. $100 prize pool. It's going to be some Swiss rounds with a top cut. I think they mentioned 5 Swiss rounds. And, of course, proxy cards are always allowed. So you can play that sweet, spicy deck that you have been brewing, but you don't quite own the cards for. Well, get those colored proxies and register on Limitless. So there's the QR code there if you want to click on that or scan it or whatever the deal is with QR codes and get to that. But that's coming up. Really excited about that. And whoever made this graphic, kudos to them. Another shout out. Congrats to you, Z-Man. You got sponsored, my friend. Moving up in the world.
Thank you. Z-Man and Waffles was too long of a discount code, but I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Darkside Games. You can use the code ZMAN15 to get 15% off your order if you're buying singles. It's all the same as market price, so instead of going to TCG Player, just go to Darkside Games, put in the ZMAN15. It helps us. It all just goes right back into us streaming games, which we started just a couple of months ago for the love of the game. We are really not in this to make money, I promise you that.
Nope.
But this is a great way to kind of help grow this kind of niche community. And Darkside Games, I really appreciate them for helping support us. So if you want to help us, if you are fans of us streaming and you need to buy some Pokemon cards, please go to Darkside Games and do Z-Man15. And 15% off your order is also really good, I have to say. I feel like most of these things are like 5%. So
yeah, I had to, when
it's
you
a
sent
pretty
me
good
the
discount.
info, I had to double check it because I was like, 15% can't be right? Like, that's too good. Like, if it's 15%, I'm going to order like $1,000 worth of cards tonight. Like,
Oh,
so.
please do. And I'll probably have the sponsor forever. Yeah. All right. No takebacks.
I got to find $1,000 first. So, all right. And the last thing, last shout out here, I think, is that, hey, we both stream and we typically do it every Monday, which is tonight when we're filming this. So, Z-Man and Waffles typically stream right before me at 7:15. You guys have sweet rapport and you guys play some really awesome, mostly rogue decks, right? Let's say meta decks don't find their way into your table too often.
We hope that the rogue deck goes against the meta deck to kind of test it, which then runs into funny things where she'll make fun of me like, did you have me play this dragon deck against Nido? But we want to make sure we can prove it. And sometimes the proof of concepts don't work. Like our last one was fossils. And like we said, our verdict is fossils are not worth it right now. But yeah, it's just a fun way to do brews. Our stream for next Monday will be a bird colorless deck that is based on damage counters. The own pheasant that evolves from P-Dove, where if it has 20 or 30 damage, it just automatically special summons to the field and then hits for 180. You can combine that with the Tauros that Jeff mentioned, and as we said before, colorless is kind of broken. So yeah, catch us on Mondays, trying to play probably a fun homebrew.
Nice.
And then you can listen to her make fun of me.
That's my favorite part of it.
Mine too.
And then right after that, I typically stream. Life's been a little busy recently. I wish I could keep more to my schedule, but I typically stream Mondays. We try to do a lot of tabletop on that day. I got my tabletop set up, and we usually have some co-hosts coming in and out from my locals. This last week, we had Landon playing his grass deck against my Articuno Blindside Water deck. So we stream too. I don't know. I used to be the rogue deck guy because there was only two of us. It was Mahone and me. So, and the meta was only defined by Mahone. So whatever Mahone wasn't playing was a rogue deck at the time. And so now I feel like there's so many other people playing all these decks that I'm like the boring guy. I'm like, hey, look, I'm playing special energy water. Woo! And everyone's like, he's got colorless birds over here, man. Like, what are you doing? He's playing cloth. Your stuff is boring. So that's where I feel
cloth
like
is actually busted. I'm taking cloth tomorrow, and we'll hopefully get a fighting badge with it. That card is insane.
The cloth fighting is the best fighting I've seen.
It's so sad. But I will say, you can't be the boring guy if Hitmons is your favorite deck.
Well,
yeah, you're not boring if fighting
Also
is your main
true.
deck.
I was gonna say, I just, on the fighting trend, I just wrote an article about it's probably a couple weeks ago, Ancient Garganackle, which again I thought was like a pretty rogue sweet deck, and then all of a sudden, like it's like the meta Ancient Garganackle deck that it's like defining what fighting is at the moment. Not that I don't think it's my type. I think Mahone played it on stream. He played his version of it on stream, and I think it's just gotten a lot of love since then. But I'm like, I don't want to be the meta deck guy. I don't want to be that guy.
As long as you got to it first. It says a lot if other people are coming to the same conclusions. It means that you're making the right decisions. And since I can give you a shout out as an independent person more, check out All About the Base's YouTube channel as well, because he goes a step further and he actually edits his videos and makes them so you can watch them in 20 minutes. So check him out. He's a rising star.
Let's all be honest. Tabletop can be hard to watch sometimes. Not saying that people aren't interesting when they're doing it, but it definitely helps to edit it down. I think my views jumped from like 20 to like 500 when I started editing the videos, even just a little bit. So every little bit goes a long way, especially when you're producing I don't know if I want to say quality content, okay content. Like we're doing the best we can out here without a online client. The PTCGO is still doing everything they can to make sure we can't play our alternative formats. Sad. Well,
so true. But I will say, playing it tabletop is kind of nice because it feels like the way that the cards are meant to be played. The best feeling is when you can go to a local store, hang out with friends. And that's why at the end of the day, this is a casual format. I love winning badges and having homebrews and things like that. But really, it's an excuse to hang out with my friends at 7 o'clock at night on a Tuesday in my 30s. It's a great way to meet people, and it's just an awesome thing.
Oh, yeah. 100% agree. Tabletop is the way. Do love me some webcam, but definitely prefer in person when possible. Well, that's it. Thank you guys for joining us for the Let Loose podcast. Again, a podcast dedicated to all things in the Gym Leader Challenge format. We'll be back next week. I'd like to give a big thanks to Zach and Ray, Z-Man and Waffles. Appreciate you both being on. It has been a pleasure talking shop with both of you.
Thank you for the 3 hours. Let's go for 4 next time, I think.